Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today's meeting is being held in person in Committee Room 1 at City Hall. Members of the public who are registered to speak are in the room with us and also on video conference. This meeting is being live streamed, and you can find the link on toronto.ca/council. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, we are meeting today as a subcommittee of the Budget Committee. Councillor Chris Moyse, Deputy Mayor Amber Morley, and myself are members of one of two budget subcommittees that have been established to hear public presentations. Our City Council colleagues, Councillor Shelley Carroll, Councillor Lily Cheng, and Councillor Jamal Myers are meeting right now at the North York Civic Centre to hear public presentations on the budget. We have approximately 97 speakers signed up to speak to us at our three meetings today at City Hall, plus another 39 registered to speak in the North York Civic Centre. I want to thank everyone who registered to speak to the Budget Committee today. For those who are speaking, here's how the process works. We have speakers in person and online. If you're online, the video conference host will activate your microphone when it's time for you to speak, and you can turn on your video if you'd like. I will call each name on the list in order. You will have 5 minutes to address the Budget Committee. After you speak, stay with us for a moment because members may have questions of you. After any questions from the committee, you may stay and listen or follow the rest of the meeting on YouTube or find some other activity to fill your evening. The clerk has received emails and communications from the public about the 2026 budget. These communications are being made available to members of council on the CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. I encourage the public to send their comments to the Budget Committee throughout the budget process by emailing buc@toronto.ca. This is a very important moment for us. It's the public's opportunity to speak to us about the budget. This is also our opportunity to consider your comments and input before we make our recommendations to the mayor. We appreciate you taking the time to participate in our budget process. And with that, let's dive in. Yes, hi, I'm Gord Perks. The first deputant we have listed is Robert Zykowski. I saw Robert. There you are. Welcome, Robert.
Okay. Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. I'm Robert Zykowski, a longtime road safety advocate and founder of the Open Streets Toronto campaign. I started the campaign last April because Toronto hasn't held a single open streets event since 2022, and I was disappointed that nobody has been pushing for its return publicly. I find it's a real shame because these events were popular given over 100,000 people attended Open Streets CO back in 2019, while tens of thousands of people took part during the active TO major road closures during the pandemic, including on Lakeshore West. There are two reasons why I feel these events have stopped. The first has to do with funding. We find that successful open streets events around the world often had dedicated and permanent funding from their cities, whereas Open Streets TO, they had to rely on external funding, which is not a sustainable approach during the long term. However, I should clarify that the city did fund active TO during the pandemic, though of course, we're talking about different circumstances here. The second reason has to do with the political leadership. So we find that successful open streets programs are often championed by the mayor, with the city department managing the operations. In Toronto's case, it was former Kristen Wong-Tam who had championed open streets in Toronto. But when she moved on to Queen's Park in 2022, it seems that the initiative had died along with her departure, unfortunately. As for Active TO, it was scrapped in 2022 because of post-pandemic traffic concerns, and there's that controversial letter that was ghostwritten for the president of the Toronto Blue Jays. We believe it's necessary to bring back open streets to Toronto this year. We find that open streets can support high-scoring priorities per the fall consultation, such as climate action, public health, and supporting local businesses. On a personal level, I find open streets programs help bring people together. They allow people to try new things, and it allows community groups to promote their causes. For example, when I used to volunteer with Cycle Toronto, I helped them set up a pop-up bike lane on Bloor Street in 2015, as well as a pop-up protected intersection at Bloor and St. George in 2018. And as we all know, these things are now permanent today. In Hamilton, they actually started their own open streets a few years ago, and I had a chance to visit that back in September. And I really liked doing their rock climbing wall, as well as checking out some food from their kitchen collective, which allows aspiring chefs to promote their work without having to open a full-out restaurant. We find that the cost to bring back open streets for 2 Sundays this year would cost about $300,000. If Toronto is to prioritize climate, health, and business vibrance, the city needs to fund open streets. We had launched a petition back in May, which has over 900 signatures, and the campaign has also been supported by 44 organizations. In addition, we will be encouraging those councillors who will be seeking re-election, as well as other candidates, to support funding for open streets in the new council term. Finally, I would like to reiterate TCC riders' support for rapid TO funding, as well as share Cycle Toronto's concerns with the reduction in capital funding for cycling infrastructure from, I believe, $175 million in 2025 to $132 million this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Are there any questions? No? Robert, thank you for joining us this evening. Next, I have Vincent Puhaka. Hi, Vincent.
That's better.
There you go.
So, Councillor, it's great. Finally, folks pronounce my name properly, and I'm really, really happy about that. I get Pukaka and Puka and all sorts of things. So, good evening. Good to see you all for another round of budget consultations. Very cold 2026 edition. Lately, the last couple years of budgets have been pretty strange for me. I cut my teeth with advocacy on work under the previous mayor and councils, and because of that, I'm so used to being very unhappy with the constant refrain of, oh, you know, the cupboard is bare, we can't afford to invest in transit, libraries, what have you, and we have to make do with less. The last few budgets have been a lot different, and as you obviously know, not perfect, but we definitely have turned the page on investing in our city. I'm very happy about that. This time around, I'm very happy with a lot of what's in the budget in there for the TTC. Another year of fare freezes, service improvements, and investment in state of good repair is very welcome. In particular, I'm very excited about fare capping. Ever since the pandemic, I've actually not bought a monthly pass. Partially that's due to working from home and living in Councillor Moise's ward, where we can pretty much walk everywhere. But also, ever since the province introduced free transfers between the TTC and neighboring systems as well as GO, I find paying single fares a lot more economical. The monthly pass doesn't give you the free transfer. And with my work and life taking me to neighboring municipalities on a lot of occasions, it just isn't very useful. All that being said, there are definitely months where I come close to the cost of the old monthly pass, especially in the colder months when the weather just isn't very nice for walking and cycling. Fare capping is personally going to make a very big difference in my life, and an even bigger difference for those who really need to take transit daily to and fro across the city. With all that said, I wouldn't be me if I didn't have some problems with the budget. The service increases are good, but not sufficient for population growth. The repair backlog is still huge, and fare capping really should be going deeper this year, ideally starting at 40 rides instead of 47. I know what you're thinking. How are we going to pay for all that? And it's a thought that I agree with, maybe surprisingly. So the last 2 years did have those large property tax increases, and I can understand trying to give some relief on that front. I'm always up here saying how I think taxes are good and save people money in the long run, but it really doesn't make sense to hammer one particular part of the population over and over again when many different groups of people benefit from public services. So in light of this, I can't stress enough the need to get started with other revenue tools that the city can implement, especially ones that don't fall directly on individuals or their essentials. TTC riders pushed hard for a commercial parking levy. Yes, I know. And I won't lie, it's extremely disappointing personally that we don't have one. But another idea would be a rideshare levy, which operates successfully in a few US jurisdictions. I'm pretty big on the rideshare levy since most of those trips are essentially luxuries. I say most, not all, but most of them are luxuries. And we know that these predatory apps directly compete with our transit system. So obviously, I understand we're in the budget process right now. Any revenue tools won't be a part of 2026 budget. Still, it is urgent that over the course of this year, council get moving on them. I really want to be up here in 2027 speaking about an expansive, ambitious budget with minimal song and dance around the property tax increase. Now, that about does it for time. I think I have a good track record of not running us right to the 5 minutes, but I look forward to what you come up with in terms of revenue tools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? No? Thank you again for your deputation. Joel Sterling is next. Hi, Joel. Very well, thank you. How are you? You just have to tap it until it turns green.
Good evening, Councillor Parks and Canadian members. My name is Joe, and I live in York South Weston, which is Councillor Nuzietta's ward. The city needs to do a better job in making sure the snow and is plowed properly in all areas that are city's responsibility, like sidewalks, roads, and areas where the bus shelters are. In some areas, like sidewalks and roads, especially the corners, are either not shoveled properly or not at all, which means I have to go on the road in order to get through. And when I'm getting off a TTC vehicle, the sidewalks at the side do need to be cleared at where the bus doors are, so you can get off and not, so I can get off and not slip and fall. That is all for tonight.
Thank you, Joel. Are there any questions? No, Joel, we appreciate it as always. The next deputant I have listed is Arushi Nath. Arushi, are you with us? No? Okay, we'll keep going. Michael Rosenberg. I saw Michael. Hi, Michael. Welcome.
Hey, which one are we at? This?
The middle one's good. And if you just tap in front of you to make sure it's green.
Screen,
you
okay.
go.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Michael Rosenberg. Every year we see some different language around the budget, and this year they've been emphasizing the word priorities. So that's good. But I wish they would look at it more from the point of view of positive and negative priorities. Like, what do we currently do that is not actually beneficial? Because there are a few things like that. And if you look at those in addition to revenues, then you have two sources of money to put towards things that are the positive priorities. So I'm always generally quite concerned about the continued acceptance of technology without too much criticism. Hopefully, the amount of criticism of technology is starting to increase a little bit, because it's getting to the point now where I think people are starting to notice. But it would be nice to see that as an area for reduced spending rather than increased spending. They seem to have sort of come up with this idea that they're phasing out some really old systems, and that's how they're going to, quote unquote, reduce the budget. But that pretty much implies that they're doing that on the backs of all the new systems that are coming in. So I'm not sure that actually shows that they've started to really doubt the usefulness of technology. But I think with AI and real dangers that exist, we should actually doubt why we want to have more technology all the time. There may be a few other areas where you could also wonder whether we benefit from them as much as we would want to benefit from the things we spend money on. I'm not 100% sure why the level of security in this building seems to be increasing all the time, but apparently you've decided to spend money on that. I think some of these things can be questioned. Do we actually benefit from all the money we're spending? This is not the same question as efficiencies or doing the same with less money. It's, do we actually need to do everything we're actually doing? And I mean, my obviously top concern is that we have to eventually reach the point where we don't view technology as a net positive, that the general trend of technology taking over everything can become essentially, literally technology taking over. And we would like to see it stop sometime before that. So the fact that you could also save some money in that budget, which the last time I looked at it was combined operating capital was somewhere around $250 million. It might be more than that because I haven't looked at it in a while. But it's not a small amount of money, and I'm sure you don't need to spend all that money, and I'm sure we don't benefit from it all, and we certainly don't benefit from the trend. So the trend has to stop at some time before technology is taken over completely, and I'd like to see that trend stopped sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions? No? Michael, thanks so much for joining us this evening. Next, I have Angelica Buha. Hi, Angelica. Welcome.
Yeah. Oh, that works. Okay, I'm good. Hi, councillors, staff, and constituents. My name is Angelica Buha. I'm a researcher and a transit advocate with a background studying Toronto's private transportation company industry. I live in Ward 11, University Rosedale, under Diane Sachs, and I'm here today with TTC riders to urge the committee to prioritize fare freezing and fare capping, as well as priority transit lanes in the 2026 budget. As you all know, the TTC is crucial to making sure that Torontonians can get where they need to go, and fare freezing and fare capping are an important part of that picture. I personally often take the TTC up to 4 times a day, sometimes more, to and from work and then to and from my late night practices. And at $3.35 a trip, there's a lot of days that I'm spending $13.40 a day on the TTC. And I'm by definition not a low income person, but I find that this cost is a huge portion of my daily expenses. And if they were to increase, it would limit my willingness and ability to get out and about. I can hardly imagine the impact this would have on low income people in the city. Toronto thrives on togetherness and community participation, and if people can't afford to be taking transit and getting out, this is going to damage the social and economic fabric of our city. Furthermore, capping fares is an excellent strategy to improve affordability, but it should be rolled out sooner than September. Why can we not do it this winter when people are taking a lot of transit because the sidewalks are snowy and they can't walk? Why can't we do it this summer when people are commuting to the city's parks, farmers markets, and events? We should be doing this faster so that people can keep moving. Also, as someone who's regularly taking the Bathurst streetcar, I've noticed a huge improvement in the speed and consistency with which the streetcar reaches Dundas northbound, so props to the city for that. But once we cross Dundas, the car traffic gets in the way again, and then we get stuck at these intersections. We're waiting for cars to turn, and the streetcars tend to bunch up as we get up to Bathurst Station. So even this partial section of priority lanes has made a noticeable impact on my commute time, so I urge the committee to prioritize their expansion. I'm tired of living in a city where people regularly say, sorry, I'm late, TTC, and that doesn't raise any further questions. We can do better than this, and we should be doing better. And as a PTC researcher, a private transportation company researcher, I feel the need to also point out that Torontonians are often taking Ubers and Lyfts because the TTC is so unreliable. Studies are showing this again and again, and I'm sure you guys can all relate to the experience of, leaving 25 minutes before you need to be somewhere that's only 15 minutes away, and then you check when the next streetcar is, and it's like in 22 minutes, and you're like, well, that's not gonna work for me, so then you call an Uber, and I don't wanna be giving my money to Uber. I know you guys don't wanna be giving your money to Uber. And if we have better and faster and more reliable transit, these trips will stay on the TTC instead of that money going into these private companies' pockets and congesting our streets further. So all that being said, I want to urge the committee to put Toronto first in this budget, maintain the fare freeze, lower the fare cap, and increase the coverage of priority transit lanes. Let's make transit better together. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for your deputation. Okay. Jiowin Wang. Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Councillor Perks, Councillor Morley, Councillor Moyes, and the committee. When I first moved to Toronto 3 years ago, I took up volunteering and mutual aid to get to know the city. What I found was the care and love that some members of the city had for each other, especially the unhoused, and an understanding of our shared responsibility to do better. I know people in the city with half their living rooms or porches filled with jackets, sleeping bags, food, and naloxone collected from the community and ready to distribute. People doing life-saving winter outreach and harm reduction in dangerous weather, or biking groceries huge distances to distribute them to their food-insecure neighbors. These community endeavors operate in tens or hundreds of dollars in gift cards and GoFundMes and e-transfers to fill in the gaps of a city that operates in the thousands, the millions, and the billions that consistently dehumanizes the people they claim to help. The committee was eager to let us know that encampments in city parks have halved since 2024. So I ask, since when did we start seeing the tents before the people? Did they actually find stable housing, or are you boasting about sparing people from the inconvenience of having to see them? We saw the violent encampment evictions and arrests at Dufferin Grove, at the St. Stephen in the Fields churchyard, and outside the 519 during Pride Month, and the 122 overdoses in December over the span of just 8 days. You claim you want a safer Toronto, but for whom? And at whose expense? Year after year, through surveys, deputations, calls, and protests, members of the city make it clear that they want less money to go to the police, and instead spend money to address root causes. We see with our own eyes the harm and violence that police do to our community. Yet every year, without fail, we see the same egregious increase in police budget. I know there are constraints and that there have been cuts in provincial and federal funding, but to grow apathetic or to feign a lack of power is insulting. If you say your hands are tied, how are we supposed to feel? So my asks today are, revoke the $93 million operating budget increase for the police and cut police service expenditures in the 10-year capital budget plan. Use this money saved to consult and talk to those on the streets and in encampments, and with the folks that are actually doing the work in advocacy. Actually listen and reinvest accordingly. We can't keep criminalizing those who've already been let down by the system as a short-term solution. And this is on all of us. If your empathy and your money extends only to the sober, the mentally well, and the housed, then it isn't true empathy, it's self-interest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? No? Thank you for your deputation. Dan Lovell. Dan, I understand you're online. Hi, Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Chair and members of the Budget Subcommittee, my name is Dan Lovell. I live in Ward 22, Scarborough Agincourt. I am a full-time public high school teacher, a member of the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, and a delegate to the Toronto and York Region Labour Council. I am speaking tonight because of Progress Toronto. I'm here today to speak as a working resident of this city who believes future budgets must better reflect the economic reality facing the majority of Torontonians. What I am asking for in future budgets is a clear shift in the burden of municipal revenue away from the working class, while maintaining or increasing funding for essential public services. Toronto has become an extraordinarily expensive city in which to live, driven primarily by housing costs. For most working families, staying financially afloat is becoming increasingly difficult, even for those who are fully employed and unionized. My wife and I moved to Toronto in the fall of 2022. In November 2024, we were able to purchase a modest condo townhouse with a 20% down payment, avoiding a high ratio mortgage. Even so, our monthly mortgage payment is over $3,200. On top of that, we pay a condo fee that began at $819 per month. I have reached the top of the public high school teacher salary grid, yet between the mortgage and housing fees alone, we are paying over $4,000 every month. That level of cost is barely sustainable. Since purchasing our home, we have welcomed our first child. My wife is currently not working, and despite careful budgeting, we are accumulating debt. Our situation is not exceptional. It reflects what many working households in this city are experiencing, doing everything right and still falling behind. At the same time, my son loves visiting our local Toronto Public Library and has recently joined the Toddler Time program. Public services matter. They are not luxuries. They are the infrastructure of a functioning city, places where families build community, where children learn and socialize, and where newcomers and seniors alike can access support without barriers. Persistent homelessness and unmet social needs should be a source of deep shame for our city. Cutting services is not an acceptable response to fiscal pressure. The same is true for public transit, recreation programs, and childcare supports. Working families depend on reliable, affordable transit to get to work and to school. They depend on recreation centers to provide safe, healthy spaces for children and youth, and they depend on affordable childcare to remain attached to the workforce. When service levels are reduced or fees are increased, the burden does not fall evenly. It falls disproportionately on those with the least financial flexibility. The solution is not to ask working residents to pay more. Property taxes should be frozen or even reduced. For many households, even modest increases compound an already unsustainable cost structure. Instead, the city must continue to pursue revenue tools that place a greater responsibility on those most able to pay. That includes measures such as the luxury home tax and other progressive revenue options that draw from concentrated wealth and profitable businesses that benefit from operating one of the most economically dynamic cities in the country and the world. Toronto has no shortage of economic activity or private wealth. What it lacks is a municipal revenue framework that fairly captures a share of that prosperity to fund the public goods that make this city livable. A budget that protects services while shifting revenue responsibility upward is not radical. It is fiscally responsible, socially just, and economically necessary. The cost of living in Toronto is becoming unbearable for the majority of residents. Future budgets must reflect that reality. We need revenue solutions that protect services, address inequality, and work for the people who keep this city running. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, seeing none. Dan, thank you so much for your deputation. Next, I have Edward Ho. Hi, Edward.
Test. All right, nice. It's already on. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time for today's meeting. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Edward. I recently graduated from university, and I've had the privilege to work in the software industry. Currently, I'm living in the College and Yonge area, and every single day I have to commute to about 1.5 hours one way, all the way to around the York University region. Generally, my TDC commute is pretty uneventful, around 1 hour spent on the subway. However, the last mile commute, where I have to take a bus between the Pioneer Village station to my actual office itself, is arguably one of the most unreliable and unpleasing sections of my entire commute. The reason behind that is around two or threefold. One is the unreliability of the frequency of the service and the intervals. Generally, these buses, the 960D, is supposed to run at 15-minute intervals, which is a very reasonable pace. However, oftentimes I've noticed that these buses bunches, and not just groups of two, but sometimes three, meaning what should be a 15-minute wait can easily become a 30, even 40-minute wait. This is something I've noticed quite frequently and especially on the commute back around 5 p.m., because typically I listen to a podcast that lasts around 1 hour, and by the time I walk to the bus station, get on the bus ride, and get to the actual subway line itself, the 1 hour podcast is almost over, which, again, what should be a 15-minute, very short and very painless ride becomes somehow longer than the entire rest of my commute, all the way from essentially Vaughan to downtown city Toronto. And this isn't an exceptional case. This is something I see very, very frequently, at least once or twice in a week. And sometimes I'll leave work 30 or 40 minutes earlier during a time interval when the buses do not suffer from such extreme cases of bus bunching. What my ask essentially is to expand the pilot program investigating public transit bunching within the GTA area, because I'm well aware that this is an isolated case. I've taken other bus routes during commute and rush hours. I've noticed that buses perform in this case very, very frequently. Additionally, something that we can also investigate is just an expansion to the dedicated bus lanes as well. Something I've noticed as well are not only is buses late, but they're extremely, extremely crowded, oftentimes having to outright skip bus stops because they simply do not have capacity to take additional people on. And I've seen situations where I've had to wait for not just a secondary bus, but a third bus, because the first two just did not have capacity for additional people. So having dedicated bus lanes that could have much more smooth and reliable transit would also remedy this issue. Thank you for the time, and thank you for this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Moyes has a question for you.
Thank you, Edward, for your deputation. Are you, in regards to the dedicated bus lanes, are you aware of the Bill 60 as legislation from the province stating that the city should not have any dedicated bus lanes, and they're actually wanting to force us to remove the existing ones that we have, in addition to also any bike lanes that we are to put in, we need their permission to do so. For example, I should be asking a question. I have been asking a question. You've been nodding your head yes or no. In my ward of Toronto Centre, we were actually in the process of actually redoing Gerrard Street this summer, and I received a notice from city staff just this past week saying that they'll have to halt it because we're putting bike lanes on Gerrard Street. Same thing with Young Tomorrow as well. So are you aware of Bill 60 and the restrictions being put on us by the province?
No, I'm not aware of this restriction, but I appreciate you informing me about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next deputant we have is Carmelo R. Pantaloni. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Perks, members. My name is Carmelo R. Pantaloni. I live at 286 McRoberts Avenue. I've lived there for 45 years. I've watched the residents destroy themselves with the water and the snow, faking it with the city. As a City of Toronto water employee, I had to do a restoration job in Scarborough on a front lawn. And now I realize that restoration job, because it was like an S, was water from the moon, because that was from the front. Just like when in front of City Hall here, you got that moon over there on the small horizon. That moon drops the water from the land, the environment. You people fabricate water and snow issues and say it costs a fortune to repair that snow. My daughter worked for Citibank. She'd been stalked and raped by the TTC. I had the cops investigate them. I had the cops go get my daughter and bring her back to my home because they were gonna kill her. You people attack Justin Trudeau's wife, daughter, with money. Mr. Perks, go ahead.
I was wondering if you had advice for us on our budget.
Yes, you're all spending like drunken sailors. Nobody cares. On McRoberts Avenue, they put leaves along the curb to make it not melt on purpose and fabricate it when it rains. And they all cause fabricating issues with the City of Toronto. I have also gone to John Tory. I understand. These people are hiding the horizon. I live on McRoberts Avenue. You go to a Hughes public school, you'll see they lifted up the road like that. That drops the light for coming this way. The horizon, the belt, which tells water from the moon in that area. And they
Carmelo,
fabricate.
again, I'm going to ask you if like the purpose here of you being here this evening is if you have any advice for us on our budget.
Well,
So if you could keep your remarks just to the city's budget, that would be really helpful.
I'm very disappointed that the City of Toronto never charged tax for the residents of the basements. Sometimes water would rise and then it would go, but that would be for the environment, and it would also be for the weeping tiles. But they fabricate sewer problems and destroy our workers, because anybody can destroy a worker. All you gotta do is make them go insane. Anybody can give a worker PTSD. It doesn't have to, that's what you're doing to our workers. You've done the bike pass. You can't even clean them now. Who can clean that? What worker do you expect to clean that? I ask you, I'm talking to you, if the residents don't care, and they complain that Olivia Chow is charging too much money for the tax. Meanwhile, John Tory gave the cops $50 million, and these people, they all complain, and we have to pay for the police to keep them safe. That's my money too. I lived here, and you know what? Thank God I'm dying, because I don't want to breathe the same air that you people breathe. So when I die, I will be so grateful. The way you killed my mother for the shadow, the way you killed my best friend's father for the shadow, Mr. Galoro, I think you killed him too. Where the land is like that, these people, you people want to build? I got no problem with you building, but don't attack America. 9/11. That's cause and effect. Build all you want. Try out your world. We don't care. We're Christians, and we abide by the law, and we love America, and we got no problem with that. And we're Italian too. Little Italy, little Portugal, little Marley, that's all gone now. Can you see it? It's all gone. You guys are making money out of condos. Do you think I don't know? They set up Galleria Mall. They say it was the Irish. When people died in the pandemic, you figure it out. 1915, you have the indigenous people
Okay,
dying.
Carmelo, that concludes your 5 minutes time for your deputation. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts tonight. I'm going to go to the next deputant now. Next, I have Chanel Lozon online. Chanel?
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Chanel Lozon, and as a resident of Ward 9, Davenport, I'm here today because of Progress Toronto. I'd like to discuss a critical opportunity within the 2026 budget to address our city's waste predicament. By investing in and supporting a citywide shift to reusable dishware in Toronto's largest venues and stadiums. I've worked in Toronto as a waste management consultant and environmental advocate, volunteering with organizations like Toronto Environmental Alliance, or T. Through my firsthand experience auditing waste at landmark buildings like First Canadian Place and the Eden Centre, I've seen the overwhelming amount of single-use cups, cutlery, containers that just flood our landfills. This isn't just litter, it's thousands of tons of avoidable waste that our city pays to collect, transport, and then send to landfill. Toronto currently manages close to 900,000 tons of waste, which is equal to the weight of 164 elephants. This system consumes significant financial resources, energy, and our limited landfill capacity, with the Green Lane landfill, which is near London, Ontario, projected to reach capacity by 2035. We can't ignore these scalable solutions. One of the most impactful steps this committee can take is to allocate funding and support policy that mandates reusables in large venues and stadiums. This is already a proven model. BC Place in Vancouver and Rogers Centre right here in Toronto have successfully piloted reusable cups during major events. The upcoming 2026 FIFA World Cup presents a great opportunity for Toronto to continue to lead in this area. According to a recent Toronto Environmental Alliance report, switching to reusable cups in Toronto and Vancouver's FIFA stadiums alone could prevent 2.3 million single-use items and 43.6 tons of waste. So it's pretty significant. Investing in reusables isn't just an environmental decision, it's economic one as well, reduces our long-term waste management costs, creates local green jobs, saves water and energy compared to continuous single-use production, and it will just enhance Toronto's reputation as a sustainable, world-renowned city. We've already begun this journey with Toronto's single-use reduction bylaw. Let's build on that momentum. So I urge the Budget Committee to consider the development of a dedicated reusable systems program for major venues supported by funding in this year's budget. As of the start of 2026, the city is expected to save about $10 million each year through the transition to a private producer-run blue bin recycling program. These savings could be put towards a new reusables program for our major venues. By making this strategic investment, we can turn our largest venues from waste generators into leaders in sustainability, saving taxpayers' dollars, extending landfill life, and showcasing Toronto as a city that chooses reuse over waste. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Chanel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next deputant I have listed is Andre Chioz. Hi, Andre. I hope I got that right, or close. Fiose? Okay. Go ahead.
On the telephone call-in and discussion about the budget last week, the mayor mentioned that the province and the city have a lot of helpful cooperation together. And I'm going to point out that when you take the province's money, you also take the province's policies. So in spring 2023, Doug Ford announced that the Science Center would be closed and demolished because it was in terrible condition. This was something that no one had ever mentioned before. No one seemed to be aware, except Doug Ford, that it was in terrible condition. As I understand it, that land is on a lease from the city to the province on condition that the province provide a science museum on that location. So Doug Ford closing it is breaking that lease. The city accepting this does seem to have a certain plan to it, because within a year, Doug Ford announced that the Ontario line would be moving through that area. And we can say that it was under false pretenses that he closed the Science Center in preparation of a subway, which is completely against whatever lease agreement probably existed there. I don't know the exact terms, but this brings up issues of criminality with corporate law and leasing terms, both on the part of the city allowing it and on the province initiating it. So in terms of the budget, this brings up the point, why haven't the police investigated this? And I would point out that when the police depend on the city and the province for funding, that creates a conflict of interest. So theoretically, if this means that the police should be investigating the city and the province, well, one reason they might not be is because they depend on money from this budget and from the province. The city planning, depending on having its budget constantly dependent upon taxes and commerce, is very much in the spirit of the Victorian era in the 19th century, where the two twin projects of that era were to increase industry with urbanization and also to preserve virginity and sex laws and all kinds of patriarchal norms that were threatened by the crowding of urban density and industrialization and capitalism that poses a challenge to traditional family values, if we want to call them that. So I would propose to the city, when it's budgeting, that it could consider more projects that don't depend on money. Could we have a city budget that can preserve historical spaces, natural spaces, without recourse to taxes or to commerce? So that's a big picture, big imagination question. Galileo said, basically initiated the scientific revolution and challenged the power of the church and patriarchy by observing the skies, the dark skies, using a telescope to see the moons of Jupiter and the phases of Venus, to show that the solar system is not as perfect, nor was it with the Earth as the center, as the church had been insisting, and that we should not be so narcissistic to believe that we are the center of the universe. So when we depend upon, for our budget, to urban development to fund our city, we are giving up a lot of our view of dark skies at night. And I would suggest one way that we could use the budget without recourse to money would be to set aside time for dark skies every week, every month, just to turn the lights off so people can have a view of the stars from the city. Emily Dickinson said that beauty is not caused, it is. A year ago, Taylor Swift came here to a tour that was widely celebrated and given a lot of love by the city, with a lot of promotion on issues like exhibits for poetry. But I suggest that this love of poetry is rather fake in this city, and the budget reflects that by its dependence on commerce and development. For example, and Taylor Swift's love of Toronto is significant. For example, she had a special edition of her latest album in August, released 9 months after a trial in which she was accused of luring people into crime involving pool noodles. As ridiculous as that sounds, a few months later, The Simpsons ended their season with a show about pool noodles. And here, this is a cover where there's certainly a reference to burlesque, but you can recognize that it's a costume you could see at Carabana. And Carabana is the only carnival that happens in absolutely direct view of a lake, and this is called Lakeside Blue. So she can refer to Toronto and its arts with love, but we are busy destroying natural spaces and cultural spaces like the Science Center for the sake of development and infrastructure. My mother was horrified when she heard that the Science Center would be destroyed, and I'm sure most Torontonians are. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Andre? Andre, thank you for your deputation this
Thank you.
evening. Next, I have Marcia Stone. I see you, Marcia. Come on up.
Good. Just call me Marcy. It's easier. My name is Marcia, but most people call me Marcia. Good evening, councillor, staff, and members of the public. My name is Marcia Stone, and I am the chair of the Western Acorn chapter and a member of the board of Toronto Acorn. I'm here today to remind the city that landlords are well aware of their obligations under the law. The city's Rent Safe program was intended to hold landlords accountable when they fail to provide a safe and healthy home for their tenants. So why then do Rent Safe officers insist that landlord education should be their first approach to solving tenant complaints? Do big corporate landlords need a gentle reminder to turn the heat on? Does it slip the mind of REIT shareholders to do proper pest control? No. These are obligations that the landlords are well aware of, as they were given a handbook when they signed on to Rent Safe program. 43 pages of their obligations are there. So, why are we not holding them to those requirements? Why are we not issuing orders to comply as soon as a bylaw violation is identified so that the city can actually force the landlord to comply? Toronto Acorn would like to thank the mayor for expanding the Rent Safe program. The number of bylaw officers have nearly doubled since she took office in 2023, and the registration fees have been increased to fund the program. But all this money won't help tenants if the program itself does not have teeth. We're excited to see color-coded signs go up this summer, but those signs need a robust rent-safe program in order to work as intended. Acorn members and tenants are engaging with Rent-Safe right now as they work to report back to the Planning and Housing Committee in April. So we just had a meeting with them last night. We had a meeting with them last week, and we're going to let you know what we told them on Zoom. We need in-unit inspections. That is the criteria that the residents want. They need in-unit inspections, especially at 500 Dawes Road. We need remedial action there. We need to issue orders to comply when violations are cited. We need a universally accepted work order form, as some landlords will not engage with the tenants and take their work orders. We need to be better on the ground tenant engagement from the city. And we need to remember that landlords know their obligation. The city needs to use its resources to remind them of those obligations. And I also have for each one of you here a copy of our Acorn demands as well. Yes, thank you. So, you know, this is the time that we need to really give this thing teeth. People are losing hope, and people's lives depend on this program being effective and doing the job that they're supposed to do, and hold these landlords accountable. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Don't go away. Don't go away.
Just a quick one for you.
You're not going to ask me something, are you?
I am.
Deputy Mayor Morley wants to ask you something. That's
I'm
okay,
sorry.
right?
Okay, you're okay.
All right. There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Marcia. Really appreciate your submission and your leadership with Acorn and the team to keep us accountable and keep us moving forward. I just wanted to ask one point of clarification. You called out the doubling in enforcement officers, and you called out the color-coded system. Is it a safe assumption to say that we have sufficient resources, but we need to be a more aggressive approach? Is that a fair sort of summary? Instead of the education piece, more of the direct enforcement from the officers that we've been investing in and growing.
Yes, and also more officers, which
More
would
put
allow
out.
for
Okay.
more, expanded inspections, right? But yes,
So the policy piece around in-unit, and then also ensuring that we have less education and more enforcement is what I took away.
exactly.
Yeah? Okay.
That's what the tenants want to see, right?
Absolutely, and
They
I think it
want their
will-
units inspected. They're paying their rent.
Absolutely.
And these guys keep double dipping every minute, going to AG.
And only looking at lobbies, right? Which isn't where people actually live. So I appreciate that.
Say what?
And they're only looking at lobbies, which isn't always where people
I say it
actually
all the
live,
time. They
right?
don't pay rent for, they don't live in the laundry.
Thank you, Marcy. I appreciate that. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, they know it, so.
Any further questions? No? Marcia, thank you.
You're welcome, Gordon.
Always good.
Anytime.
Well, we'll just have to keep finding reasons to invite you down here.
See y'all.
Okay. Stacy, it's your turn. Stacy Semple, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Hi. My name is Stacy Semple. I'm the chair of the Downtown Toronto Acorn chapter. Just like to ask, is everybody nice and warm and cozy tonight? Make sure to wear your layers, especially with the upcoming weekend. In this extreme cold, we wear layers and we find warm shelter, but in the summer, we don't have those resources. It's actually the opposite side of the coin. So we're approaching possible record low temperatures this coming weekend, as I said, and it's hard to imagine in just a few months, here before you know it, we're going to be dealing with heat waves yet again. I want to start with a thank you for expanding the air conditioning program since the launch of the pilot project last year. This is a much-needed service to assist those who aren't able to access cooling measures during the heat. However, there is more to be done. As we all know, summers, and now even spring and falls for that matter, are only getting hotter. Climate change is here, and we need to take proactive steps to protect ourselves and others from extreme heat and weather. We're asking for a budget of $1.25 million for this expansion to provide 1,500 air conditioners to low-income seniors and another 1,000 air conditioners to other low-income residents. We also ask that the TTC consider waiving fares during extreme heat events so people can find immediate relief nearby. We're asking you to redirect 10% of the police budget and use some of those funds for that, so that, as it always amazes me actually, back in December, that the Toronto Police Services, and by that means too the City of Toronto, spent money on 9 cruisers and a police drone to protect Rob Ford's house. I'm sorry, I thought it was the Ontario Provincial Police, not the City of Toronto. Doug Ford, the Premier. We caroled his house one night in December, just about 20, 30 of us, and 9 Toronto police cruisers and a drone. What a waste of money that could go to TTC fares being used to help people relieve themselves from the heat. In the meantime, where's Toronto Public Health? They need to do more. They assist in health promotion for healthy living, including families, environmental health for clean air and water, and even emergency preparedness. But under their environmental area, it only addresses climate impacts through education and monitoring, but in brackets, only lists cold weather. We need to really start considering the heat. I know we have cooling centers, but we need more. Having said that, I don't want to see average death totals rising with only estimates of anywhere from 120 to 250 heat-related deaths in Toronto each year. They should also be tracking people when they become ill due to heat, not just deaths. Statistics Canada and health researchers emphasize that extreme heat poses a severe threat with rising mortality trends observed in Canada, especially here in Toronto. Finally, the maximum heat bylaw. We will continue to ask for it to be applied year-round. Just note that, please. And thank you again for speeding up the timeline up on this. It's unfortunate that MLS, after a horrible auditor's report last year, and we continue to ask them to provide better, more authentic services, that they attempted to push for the compliance study to not be presented until 2027. We need to take these steps sooner rather than later, as people's lives matter and this city is only getting hotter. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thanks very much, Stacy. Christina Abbott. Good evening, Christina.
My name is Christina Abbott. I'm the co-chair of the East York chapter of ACORN. I'm here about affordable housing, which seems to be a program that ACORN has had since 2004. We're still hoping for it. We are mandating for a full rental control, including vacancy controls in perpetuity on all new housing developments receiving municipal funding. We are asking for a 5% vacancy tax. I know that you're talking 3. We would like 5. Just saying. To apply to vacant apartments and taxes and money used for MURA, which, as you know, is the multiple residential building format. There's a great need for affordable apartments for seniors, not market rate, but truly affordable rent for seniors on CPP and OAS on the lower end of the scale. Those apartments have to have large doorways to allow wheelchairs and scooters access. Washrooms and kitchens should be built for handicapped seniors. There's a greater need for apartments, not houses. We're always talking about families and houses, but more people live in apartments and can't afford apartments. We would like to have funds earmarked to purchase the rental property at 500 Dawes Road and create a community land trust to oversee the building. If anybody has ever been at any of these meetings, they know what a pit 500 Dawes is. We've had more politicians through that place. We've had children die from falling off the balconies. Something has to be done, and the landlord is a slumlord. There's no other way to describe her. There's been little or no housing built, nursing homes built in the last 20 to 30 years. There's a need to change. One of the largest group of citizens in Canada are seniors, and we're doing nothing for them. They're living in rat-infested apartments. They're living in old, decaying buildings. We need to do better. We should be ashamed of ourselves. I had 43 mice in my apartment, my last apartment. I have a lady in my building that's had 95. Now, I have a friend who's in a nursing home now, and she's paying $7,000 a month, more than $7,000 actually. And quite frankly, it's not worth the cost that she's paying, but that's what the rate is. We don't have places for people to go. Not everybody has 300,000, 3 million, whatever they have. Most people that are retiring now had low income paying jobs, whether they had BAs, MAs, whatever. They didn't get paid what people are being paid now. So their income is much lower than it needs to be, and we need to do something about that. I know they're talking about not taxing CPP and OAS. That was something that was floated out in the air. That would help a lot of people. But we need to do more for senior citizens. We need to build places that are safe and that have programs that will engage people to keep them young at heart and keep their minds working. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, Christina, thank you very much. Next, I have Ann Curie. Good evening, Ann.
Thank you. So good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Ann Keary. I'm a member of the Parent Climate Advocacy Group for Our Kids. I also serve as co-chair of Toronto Climate Action Network, which is an umbrella organisation of now over 70 climate groups across the city. As a long-time advocate for climate justice, there is much in this budget that I'm thankful for. I support the increase to the land transfer tax on luxury homes at a time of growing inequality, with 1 in 4 children experiencing food insecurity while corporate profits continue to surge. It is only fair that those who benefit from this economy do more to support the services that Torontonians need. I also support the TTC fare freeze and the introduction of fare capping. This benefits transit riders, it benefits us all. An accessible transit system makes life more affordable, encourages more users, reduces congestion and air pollution, and improves public health. Win, win, win. I'm also really pleased to see that the pilot air conditioner program for vulnerable tenants is to be expanded. We need this. In our worsening climate crisis, as we have heard, heat is the #1 killer, especially of the elderly, people with chronic health conditions, and the very young. Delivering more cooling units to more tenants will save lives and protect health, and we need more of this. With regards to climate mitigation, it's great to see funding for renewable energy and retrofit projects for Toronto community housing and for the HELP program for those lucky enough to be homeowners. These programs make life more affordable by reducing energy bills. They will also reduce our dependence on polluting gas-fired power, improve residents' health, and generate jobs. All of this work and more is advancing our Transform TO climate strategy, which is great, but not yet at the speed or scale to truly meet the crisis bearing down on us and on the most vulnerable and on our kids. So this brings me to my ask. Yes, we absolutely need more provincial and federal funding, but we also need a better climate communications strategy to increase engagement and drive momentum here in this city. This is needed to address this is also needed to address the growing problem of climate misinformation. So a strategy informed by research on climate communications, which is itself a growing field, and supported by resources and staff, would, 1, encourage more uptake of the programs offered by the city and other levels of government, such as heat pump programs related to heat pump installation, rooftop solar, retrofitting work, and the province's Peak Perks program that reduces energy usage and saves residents money. 2, make better use of the city's own information infrastructure, libraries. I'd love to see a climate librarian. Community centres, settlement houses, the TTC to reach more communities across the city. And really happy to also see that libraries are going to be open 7 days a week. Fantastic. I'd love to see a messaging component integrated into all Transform TO initiatives across all sectors. Think signs on our renewable energy projects. Too many of them people don't even know about. Information on how much energy and dollars are saved on retrofitted buildings could be posted. Our Premier, whatever you might think of him, knows how to put labels on things. We could also be doing more to put labels on things so that we know what can be done and drive momentum in the right direction. 4, ensure that education and opportunities for feedback are included in climate action grants. Currently, I do know that the Youth Climate Action Grants in schools, which is great, does not include any education about Transform TO. And education on this is something that young people have asked for. We also need opportunities for youth to share their perspectives on what is needed to address the climate crisis. And lastly, we need to improve public understanding of the co-benefits of climate-related projects, the health, affordability, and employment benefits. We so need to break the false environment versus the economy framing. Good climate policies are health and employment policies too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Anne? No? And as always, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. Vikas Nath is next. Vikas Nath. No? Okay, we'll go to the next person. Wilkie Whale. Hi, Wilkie. Welcome.
I wouldn't normally be reading off my phone, but, circumstances, so yeah. Hello, counselors and staff. My name is Wilkie Whale, and I live in Ward 11, University of Rosedale, though I spend a lot of my time in Ward 13, Toronto Centre. I've been a transit rider since I was in middle school, and I come here to advocate for funding for the TTC. First, I think the proposal for fare capping is a great idea that will transform the TTC for the better, and it is critical then that the item is funded. I understand, though, that the current plan is to introduce it in September. However, that's 9 months away. The people who rely on the TTC need this relief now, not later. So I'm in support of additional funding for fare capping to roll out before September. And that actually goes out more generally for TTC service increases, because often I see that service is approved in the budget cycle around now, but it only ends up being delivered in the autumn. And that's like, we need improved service now, not in 9 months. And I've been seeing this for years. It's bad. I'm also in support of a fare freeze, especially because I'm a post-secondary student and I don't get a regular fare discount like high school students do. In fact, many other cities around the world offer discounted fares for secondary students. And if the TTC had this discount, that'd be amazing for me and my fellow students. It would be great. I know many people who are barely able to afford the TTC fare on top of their already tight monthly budgets, so anything that can be done to relieve them is critical. I also want to tell you a story that happened to me as I was coming here tonight. I was waiting for the streetcar when I noticed a person trying to hail a cab, even though there was a streetcar about to come. And the streetcar, the person clearly did not have faith in the streetcar to deliver them to their destination on time and efficiently. So they clearly did not see the TTC as a viable transportation method. Another thing that happened, when I was walking here from Queens Station, I was walking by Bay Street and I saw there were 2 Bay buses bunched up together. And that, again, is another problem that has some of its roots in poor funding. If the TTC had greater funding, then it could have initiatives to reduce bunching, have transit priority red lanes, higher frequencies, and ultimately serve the public in the best way possible. Maybe then people wouldn't be choosing taxis. Lastly, I want to talk about funding. Toronto currently has a litany of unfunded plans and proposals for better transit, affordable housing, and other initiatives to make the city more livable. I understand, though, that the city does not have infinite money, so more funding is needed from upper levels of government and other sources. I think that it's very important for elected officials to be pushing higher levels of government for increased funding. But I understand the current provincial regime has not been favorable to the city's aspiration, but in my opinion, that makes the advocacy all the more important. I also support exploring alternative means of revenue to fund city initiatives, including the many ideas for this presented tonight by other speakers. And look, I love this city. I know that there are many passionate people in this government who want to see good things happen. So I implore you to implement fare capping, increase the TTC's budget, and advocate for increased funding for the city's budget as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Hands up all members of the committee who are willing to push the provincial government for more funding. There you go, Wilkie. Your point has been made. Councillor Moyes has a question.
Just a point of clarification. You said you're post-secondary. My understanding, and I may be wrong, that doesn't the University Student Union cover transit fees or?
I go to TMU. I'm not aware of any student union covered stuff. So
I know U of T has done that for many years. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thanks.
And I know also that there is the transit pass for post-secondary students, but that doesn't fit my needs because I don't know if I'm going to be using the TTC that much in 1 month. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Everybody having fun?
Of course. We're
Good. Glad to hear it. It's better than being outside right now. Patricia O'Connell is online. Hi, Patricia.
Right?
Here you are. Hi, welcome.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a volunteer with the Toronto Drop-In Network. And my understanding is that each member of this committee has at least one drop-in in your ward. I got involved with homeless, mental health, and addiction sector about 20 years ago, first at an organization called Working for Change. You might be aware of the Parkdale Green Thumb, Out of the World Cafe, Raging Spoon, and the Parkdale Activity Recreation Center. After my work at these organizations, I ended up as the ED at Sistering. And the day after I started at Sistering, the city funded us as a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day a week drop-in, low barrier drop-in for women. We were funded for 25 women and often had 70 stay there at night. And it was when I was at Sistering that I realized how important drop-ins were to the housing continuum. A few years ago, the feds put out a diagram showing the spectrum of housing. Drop-ins were not included. Now, I fully support the calls for more housing of various types and for shelters. However, I want you to know that many more folks would die if we didn't have drop-ins. Drop-ins provide safe indoor spaces out of the weather. I can't imagine what homeless people are doing tonight. As an example, drop-ins provide places for people to rest, often 3 meals a day and snacks. At Sistering, we had doctors, psychiatrists, nurses, trained social workers, counselors, and mostly what drop-ins provide is a sense of community for people that come there. They have other people to speak with. They get support when when it's needed, either from staff or other participants. And often programming is provided, which can teach skills, be a recreational activity, and all of these things help develop community for the people that use drop-ins. And they give people a sense of dignity. Unfortunately, in my experience, the drop-ins are not at the forefront of most politicians' minds. Drop-ins save lives. They have Narcan and sadly have to use it too many times. Drop-ins provide basic needs, showers, hygiene supplies, clothing, food, and support for people at the time of their greatest need. One day at Sistering, a woman came very hesitantly to my office to ask for help. She had been staying in a McDonald's for 2 nights because she had left an abusive home. We were able to quickly get her a nice hot shower, clean clothes and food, and support from staff that allowed her to get back on her feet and onto the next chapter of her life. One of my favorite participants was an 80-year-old woman with mental health problems. She couldn't stay in a shelter. She just wasn't suited for it. So she slept across 3 chairs every night in the drop-in. But she was there, she had people to speak with, she was part of the community. So in summary for me, drop-ins are an integral part of the housing continuum. I know you've heard how underfunded they are, and I can attest to that. When we did our first collective agreement, we were not able to raise anyone's salary even by 1 cent. What I'm asking for from this committee is if you have drop-ins, please advocate for them. Let your colleagues know what fantastic community resource they are and how important they are to the most vulnerable in our city. And I guess my biggest ask is if there are unallocated funds in this year's budget, that you allocate them to the drop-in sector.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for the work you do. Are there any questions? No? Patricia, thanks for sharing that with us tonight.
Thank you, Gordon.
Leanne Huneau? Hi, Leanne.
Hello, good evening. It's nice to be here in person. It's my first time doing it in person, so I'm excited. Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. My name is Leanne. I am a volunteer with Progress Toronto. I've lived in Toronto for 8 years, so long enough to know the TTC announcements by heart, and also long enough to remember when seeing someone in serious mental distress in public was alarming, not just part of the daily commute. Today, people in distress are everywhere. On the TTC, in grocery stores. On Sunday, I watched a woman screaming in distress, completely overwhelmed in my neighborhood food basics, while the rest of us did that very Toronto thing where we pretend not to know what to do and that we don't see it because we don't know what else to do. And that is the point. We don't know what else to do because as a city, we've decided not to build systems that actually help people before they reach that moment. Let's be clear, this isn't a people behaving badly problem. This is a policy problem. We didn't suddenly become a city of worse humans. We became a city that chronically underfunds housing, mental health care, and addiction services. And then we act shocked when those unmet needs show up loudly, publicly, and inconveniently. In just the first 6 months of 2024, 135 people experiencing homelessness died in Toronto. That's 5 deaths a week. Imagine if 5 Torontonians were dying every day. Imagine if 5 housed Torontonians were dying every week because of a policy failure. We wouldn't call that complex, we would call it an emergency. So what do we do instead? We pour money into enforcement, we criminalize poverty, and we try to make people disappear. Not because it works, but because it's visible and politically easier than fixing the root causes. Spoiler alert, I think we all know it's not working. Policing does not create housing. Police officers are not mental health professionals, and using them as such is wildly expensive and deeply inefficient, not to mention unfair to everyone involved. So here are my budget asks. First, supportive housing. Toronto estimates it costs roughly $60,000 per year to support someone in the shelter system versus only $20,000 to $30,000 in supportive housing. I'm asking the committee to allocate funding for at least 2,000 additional supportive housing units, which would require roughly $55 million annually. Second, community mental health care. The city currently spends a fraction of its overall budget on mental health supports compared to policing. I'm asking you to invest an additional $25 million into community-based mental health services, mobile crisis teams, drop-in counseling, and neighborhood clinics. Third, to echo Patricia's thoughts, harm reduction and outreach. We know that closing supervised consumption sites doesn't stop drug use. It just moves overdoses into shelters, drop-ins, and public spaces. I'm asking you to commit, say, $13.8 million to expand those reduction services, because dead people don't recover and invisible overdoses don't mean fewer overdoses. That would be $93.8 million well spent, in my opinion. Let's stop treating policing as the default solution to social collapse. If we can afford to grow police budgets year over year, we can afford to meaningfully fund prevention. These problems are complicated, they are long-term, and yes, they are expensive. But what we're doing now is also expensive, it's just expensive and failing. What we're seeing on our streets isn't a failure of individuals, it's a reflection of exactly what the city has chosen to fund and what it has chosen not to. Thank you.
Oh, don't go away. Leanne, I'm sure you know this, but I'm trying to promote it with as many deputants as possible. If you see someone in crisis or know someone who's in crisis, a good resource is to call 211.
Okay, thank you.
Sure you knew that anyway, but I think the more often we say it out loud, the better. Councillor Moyes has a question for you.
Yes.
Thank you for your deputation, Leanne. Again, you brought up some very important points, and the things that you brought up are of concern to not only me as a councillor, but as a resident of Toronto. And, you know, I live in Toronto Centre. I've been living here for 30 plus years. And I just want to remind people that, are you aware, it should be a question, that mental health is healthcare. Addictions is healthcare, you know that. And healthcare is a provincial responsibility, right? And are you aware that the province doesn't really fund these services in the way that they should?
Just I'm going to jump in. Don't be alarmed by the whole "are you aware" thing. Councillors are only allowed to ask questions, or ask questions.
I mean, my response to that would just be, we can point fingers about allocation. We all know it's also about pressure, right? And so we need to pressure the provincial government for that type of funding, for the money for ourselves to do it if they're not going to do it for us. I'm not comfortable just saying that's provincial, they have to take care of it and it's for them. It's all of us. And
it is all of us. And, you know, yes. I mean,
am I aware? No,
yes. we all pay taxes, you know, and governments is different levels and, you know, all this other stuff. Yes. But I do understand that. So are you aware that the city has gone above and beyond? And initially we had a pilot project for the Toronto Crisis Service in the downtown core, and now that it's actually citywide, that is something that we've gone above and beyond. That's not really in our purview, but we've actually recognized the gap and the need and invested millions into this program. Are you aware of that?
I think it's great that that's happening, but until I literally don't see distressed people daily in my life, I will come here and continue to ask for more. Whether or not you're putting more in, we need more. So it's great. More, please.
Yes. And before you go,
thank you very much.
Are you aware?
I am now.
No, where are you going?
Okay. More money, so you guys can distribute.
Okay. Well, that was a lot of fun. I know. Are you all aware that the next deputant is Julian MacArthur? Hi, Julian.
Hi.
Come on up.
Good evening. It's good to meet you all, councillors. I'd like to preface, first of all, and say that I'm here because of Progress Toronto. So I'm not a longtime city resident, unlike many here. In fact, I'm very much a newcomer. I came in the last year. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Winnipeg. As someone, yeah, I think so. As someone without much experience in the city, I'm really continually struck by the amount of building that's happening around me, much of it funded or supported by the city. Compared to where I grew up, especially in the transit system, the investment that is happening here now looks staggering. And something else that's striking to me, well, it may seem obvious for everyone who has experience in Toronto, is the sheer number of people around me now. I read in the Toronto Star, actually, that our metropolitan area was the fastest growing in the US and Canada, according to most recent statistics. So it looks as if growth will continue, and my experience as a new resident will be among many in the years to come. And then keeping that fact in mind, I'd like to invite members of council to think for a moment from the perspective of someone young like me who did not grow up in Toronto, who's experiencing the city for the first time. For me, the TTC was my first point of contact with the city. And I think that's true for many people. In fact, given the number of tourists and immigrants that Toronto receives every year, it would be safe to say that for millions of people, the TTC might be the first point of contact with Canada outside of the airport that many have. And given that important role, so the $23.9 billion currently proposed in the capital budget between transportation and transit seems like a great step in the right direction. There are lots of great new projects and recent projects like the Eglinton and Finch lines, which are very encouraging to me. But I think that other cities in this country would do well to follow Toronto's example. But I would like to see that we go a bit further. And I see the reaction there. If you ever lived in Winnipeg, you would know that many cities are not even doing the bare minimum, unfortunately.
I used to occasionally work in Winnipeg.
Well, there you go. So I think that maybe we should look outside of Canada for inspiration. If we look to the Metropolitan Transport Authority in New York, the amount of money they've allocated over the next 4 years per resident per year in Canadian dollar terms is about double the proposal in the 10-year capital plan here. I think that we could be more aggressive. We can push for more funding. That would go a long way to improving new residents' experience with the city. It would do a lot to alleviate some of the problems that we see in our transit system now in terms of slowdowns and delays. The very first ride I took on a streetcar in Toronto was 40 minutes late. I think that's an experience I share with some others here. I heard talk of delays earlier. So mainly that's my goal tonight is to ask that there be more investment in the TTC and that if we want to make sure that people experience Toronto as a world-class city that it is, we need to make sure that we have a world-class transit network. And I think over the next few years, it will matter a lot the amount of investment that we put in. And that's the key ask for this budget. So I think I would just like to finish by encouraging that year on year, because I noticed in the capital plan as well, there's actually a decline every year in the amount of funding for new capital projects, that year on year maybe there's some increase given the rate of growth, given projections that the population will continue to rise, that we should maybe think in longer terms about building up even further. And I think that if we put more investment for more services, for more people, that will make this city a much better place to live in, and that people are only young for one part of their life, but the city itself can be young forever. I think if we have good leadership, if we try to strengthen our systems, that could keep Toronto as a great place to live for the rest of time. Thank you.
Okay, Julian. A+, and welcome to Toronto.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I almost walked away there. No questions.
Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you.
You still get the A+. Okay. We're going to go now from someone who's new to making a deputation at the Budget Committee to someone we've heard from a few times. Mr. Hamish Wilson, come on down.
Well, thank you, councillors. Thank you, George. I do sound like a stuck record because there seem to be a few obvious things that we still don't quite seem to be managing to be doing. It's really uphill, so thank you very much for doing what you've been doing. It's not an easy time for so many people. One of the core things that the city wants to do is have equity in everything that it's doing, and I would suggest that perhaps with the property taxes, the core is being hit a bit more, pays a lot more in the property taxes in the old core than the suburban areas, the old suburban areas tend to do. So to some degree, there's a bit of inequity, and some of the downtown core wards, Stephen Wickens analyzed the amount of money paid by various wards, and it's posted on his Blue Sky feed. 3 wards paid about a quarter of the property tax revenue. Just that would be interesting in terms of having a little bit more respect for what the core wants to have done when it comes to voting time. Yeah, like the council is much better than it used to be, but it's still uphill, and then there's always the province. And the housing inflation that we've had has also been incredible, really. When you go back a decade or 2 decades, it's gone up 200%. It's gone up a lot. So having a mere 2% or 1.5% property tax increase in light of all that housing inflation, sometimes it's appreciation because people do good work on things, but sometimes it's just doing nothing but hardly even bare maintenance, and it still ratchets up. So having more property tax beyond what the modest amount is might actually be a good idea, because it might actually encourage some of the people with larger homes to maybe rent out a room. And if the property taxes go up on the garages as well, well, then maybe they might think about, maybe there's a way to do something different on the garage land, which of course there should be. And then we might have more money to actually start to invest in housing. And I would suggest that we look to both Singapore and Vienna for public methods of actually providing more housing. They seem to be good. Now, there is a way with property taxes, too, to actually maybe lower them by having a situation where you actually charge the cars more. From decades back, maybe you remember this, Gord, get roads off welfare, high property taxes pay for roads. A case of Minneapolis roads, name of a report, showed that more than half the money spent on Minneapolis roads comes from non-transportation revenue sources. The majority comes from property taxes. Quote, the subsidy from the property taxpayer to the motorist causes two problems, says Bailey. That's John Bailey. First, the motorist doesn't feel the true cost of driving. This encourages more cars and more driving and discourages alternatives like mass transit, bikes, or telecommuting. And the second problem is an equity one. Many urban dwellers don't own cars, yet they substitute cars through their property taxes. So this report was suggesting that shifting the cost of road maintenance repair from property taxes onto gas taxes would possibly lead to a 40% decrease in residential property taxes by the city of Minneapolis. So this aligns with something from 30-odd years ago, January 10th Globe, cars about how different forms of buildings and cars are subsidized. There's a quote from Ken Cameron, quote, who's the Vancouver Regional Senior Planner at the time, 30-odd years ago, quote, we realized that the public subsidy enjoyed by the private automobile amounts to $2,700 per automobile per year, or about seven times the amount we subsidize public transit. The costs are buried. It also includes things like drainage taxes and the asphalt drainage and the climate change things. But most people can relate to $2,700, but if it's seven times, if that's, we need to, the transit costs are all in one budget. The car costs are diffused in every budget at every level and also taken from the future. So please, let's think about having a vehicle registration tax again. $200 would be, I think, a deal. And I'm sure some people would go quite anxious about it, but it would be a lot more fair. So let's think about that and start to invest it back into transit. With biking and specific things, I'm not a fan of the rail trail extension completely. Let's just half that. No, I'm not. I think it's an excessive amount. If we could half it and put the other, save the money to getting the Queen Street tracks moved a little bit to get in and out of Parkdale more directly, it's not good value, I'm afraid, for what's proposed. We still we probably should be putting down.
Hamish?
Yes.
You're over time, my friend.
Oh, how did that happen?
I should have been paying closer attention. I am going to make a note in my diary that after 40 years, I finally heard Hamish Wilson saying, "Don't spend money on cycling infrastructure." So.
Yeah, well,
it's a red letter day for all of us.
Well, and there's a joke, the premier biked to a library.
There you go. Are there any questions? No? Thank you very much, Hamish. Okay, Leonardo Zuniga. Hi, Leonardo.
Hi, Councillor.
You guys don't mind, I'm trying to keep it a bit light tonight, right? That's okay? All right. Don't want to be all serious all the time. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Councillor Morley, Councillor Perks, and Councillor Moyes. Is housing a privilege, or is housing a human right? My name is Leonardo Zuniga. My gratitude to Progress Toronto, because I'm here because of them. I'm speaking today as a concerned and proud Canadian citizen and member of Toronto's LGBTQ and Latino communities. For 20 years, I have dedicated to working and volunteering to building a better Toronto, and I am here today because I'm struggling sincerely, immensely, to survive in the city that I love. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and gay Latinos who are facing even greater challenges than myself. I'm speaking and I'm asking the committee to prioritize affordable housing and rent geared to income effective housing in this year's budget. As a gay Latino frontline worker, college student, volunteer at multiple organizations, I have experienced firsthand the impact of systemic inequality. Despite my professional network and ongoing civic engagement, I am facing the risk of homelessness. Income insecurity remains a harsh reality. Over the past 2 years, I have been forced to live in five different apartments, often sharing a one-bedroom unit with another person, and I'm the one who has to sleep in the living room. These situations are negatively affecting everything in my life, my sleep, as well as my mental and my physical health. Today, I urge the committee to prioritize truly affordable housing and effective rent geared to income housing in this year's budget, because I refuse to become another statistic, and I refuse to allow any of my friends to become another statistic as well. And I hope that together we can continue working to build a Toronto that is inclusive and livable for everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? No? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Morley has a question for you, Leonardo.
Just a
if you
quick
wanna
one.
Stay in your chair for a sec.
It's one of our favorites. Are you aware? Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story and your experience. I appreciate your voice and your advocacy. Are you aware that last year, more than 65% of all new housing starts in the City of Toronto for affordable housing were city-led projects? Did you know that
Not to
statistic?
that specific statistic, but
I know
thank you
sometimes
for
it's hard
sharing
to
that.
feel when we're under pressure and we need the supports today, but I just hope that gives you a little bit of hope to know that this council is investing. We're seeing shovels in the ground, and we are really working hard to move this issue forward of affordable housing, and I hope it eventually comes to support you and your life and contributions in our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us this evening. Next, I have Alexa Volkov. Alexa? Good evening, Alexa. Welcome.
There we go. Thank you. So thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Alexa Volkov. I've lived in Toronto for over a decade, half of which I spent in my current ward of Davenport, and I'm often asked how I feel about living here. I actually grew up in a rural area, and family and friends sometimes wonder how I can withstand the perceived downsides of a large city, such as traffic, having to live so closely among so many people, so many of whom are visibly struggling, and as Leanne stated earlier tonight, seeing people truly suffering on a daily basis, and of course the general unaffordability. And in response, I always answer that truthfully, I love living in Toronto, and I'll stay here for as long as I can, as long as I don't get priced out. As a car owner, cyclist, and avid transit user, yes, the traffic frustrates me, but I'm fortunate to be able to walk, bike, or take transit to pretty much everything I need, something that cannot be said for most other Canadian cities. And I see how there is so much more potential here, from expanded cycling infrastructure to signal and lane priorities for transit to reduced fares. Yes, we live in close quarters, but that's how I like it. I love being connected to my neighbors, who frequently give me support when requested, as I try to do for them. And yes, while I constantly see the harsh realities that so many residents are facing, I choose not to look away, instead questioning how we got here and taking inspiration in the resilience of both the individuals and the communities who are working every day to build something better. And yes, the city is unaffordable. That's why I feel the need to add that caveat. I'll live here as long as I don't get priced out. I'm also an urban planner and a housing policy analyst by trade. I'm also a member and volunteer of various civic groups, including Progress Toronto. I see the work that the city is doing, from building affordable housing to shelters to expanding library hours. There is progress here, but it's nowhere near enough. And without a serious change in how we do things, we risk losing so much more than we already have. We risk losing what little affordable housing we have, losing infrastructure and opportunity, and worst of all, we risk losing people, both those who choose to move away and those who die here trying their hardest to make this work. And that's why I'm here today, because I want to share my vision for what this city could be and to fight for the things that I want to protect. And that's why I'm calling on you to invest more in the things that truly create a thriving city. I want to see a transit system that really works for all, meaning increased service levels, transit priority, and capped and reduced fares. I want to see real, unprecedented action to address housing insecurity and homelessness. This means building and sustaining more deeply affordable and supportive housing, as well as shelters and drop-ins. And it means protecting tenants through increased property standards, enforcement, and expansion of programs like Rent Safe, which help keep people in livable homes. And I'm going to go off script here for a moment to correct for some of the oversimplification that Councillor Moisey stated earlier, this idea that healthcare is only the purview of the province. I think we all know that one's mental and physical health is highly impacted by their life circumstances. And housing is one of the most basic social determinants of health. There's no shortage of city documents that state this clearly and call for interventions such as supportive housing as one of the main ways to sort of support those that are in the most stress. And supportive housing is within the purview of the city as service manager. Anyway, back to my script. I also I want to see the introduction of clean air infrastructure and protocols in public spaces so that I don't have to continue witnessing the permanent and life-changing impacts that COVID and other airborne illnesses are having on my community's health. And I want to see the continuation and expansion of programs throughout the city, including youth programs, student nutrition programs, and library services. And perhaps one of the most critical parts of this vision is defunding and reallocating funding from the police. The truth is, this city's massive dedication of funds to the police, who make our communities actively worse at the expense of services we really need, is the worst aspect of Toronto. I've seen police brutalize people on the streets, standing for human rights and dignity. I see how police is the go-to response to individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. Again, police being in the purview of the city. It's the go-to response for visible homelessness or those facing an eviction, a choice that time and time again sees the enactment of violence against these individuals and the complete upending of their lives. The truth is, this city and its people cannot and will not thrive if we continue on the same path that we're going down now.
Okay, I'm afraid that's your time. Are there any questions for Alexa? Okay, Councillor Moise.
Are you aware that the city built 65% of affordable housing this past year in the city? And also are you aware that when you combine TCHC and other supports in the city around housing, we spent $1.7 billion on housing in the city. So it's not.
So members, I'm going to pause it here. I know that the are you aware thing is a way of making a statement that might be helpful to the community. I'm going to start ruling that it's not a question if it's just being used as a point of debate. Okay.
I would like to respond to that, though, if I do have the opportunity. Thank you. I am aware of the 65% statistic, as Councillor Morley just shared. I actually don't really see the relevance of that statistic when the City of Toronto is the service manager, so you are actually responsible for all affordable housing in the city, whether it's city provided or that other 35% that's community housing provided. I understand that there's a critical role for the province and the federal government in the building of this housing. But the fact is, our wait list is still thousands of households long. The city is not meeting its targets that it outlined in its 10-year housing and homelessness plan, nowhere near it. and homelessness is still increasing. So it's clearly not enough. And until we see, the response to somebody living on the street being immediately placing them in a unit rather than sticking the police on them, I don't think it's enough.
Okay. Are there any other questions? No? Seeing none?
I saw that look.
Yeah, you did.
I have many questions.
I know, and you know what? I wish we could all just, go out and have a coffee and talk this stuff through, but we're stuck with this mechanism. Like, we've been here now 10 and a half hours, so it's hard to have a full conversation, but we appreciate your deputation and your passion on these issues and your commitment to the people of Toronto. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next deputy I have listed is Mel Giblin. Deputy Mayor Morley, can you take the chair for a minute?
Hello, is this working?
Yes, Mel, go ahead. You've got 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Mel. I am a longtime resident of the City of Toronto. I was up here last year in Etobicoke when I was a resident of Davenport. This time, I regrettably, no offense to anyone in the room, come to you as a resident of Toronto St. Paul. The reason for this being unfortunate circumstances that I think many people are familiar with, all too familiar with, housing precarity that unfortunately led to me being forced to leave my home. And that was originally what I wanted to speak to you today, my experiences with this and the devastating impact it's had on my life, on my mental health, on my finances, on my performance at work, which has also in turn negatively affected my mental health, my life, and my finances. But instead, I think what I really want to talk about is this idea of responsibility and accountability in jurisdiction, particularly because of my experience working as an affordable housing analyst here in the City of Toronto. It's something that I face every day in my work, the pointing of fingers between whose responsibility is it. Is it the province's responsibility because of their jurisdiction over health, because of their responsibility and jurisdiction over different types of housing in particular? Or is this something that is a responsibility of municipalities? And what I often find as a person working in this, speaking with residents, speaking with people who are in the most dire need, is that the person who ends up holding the buck are the people in greatest need. Earlier today, someone spoke of $93.8 million. That's the exact amount that the budget is increasing for police. The police that are oftentimes brutalizing the population. I've been at protests, and I mentioned this last year, where there are more police than there are people protesting. I've watched with my own 2 eyes as police have evicted people experiencing homelessness from encampments. I have watched as the city has passed legislation or policy after policy, I think oftentimes out of political risk management more than anything, cowering, it feels like, as a resident in fear at, the backlash that they face from a public or parts of the public that says, we can't have protests near these kinds of buildings or in these kinds of places. And as a result, the police presence grows ever more and ever more, never really stopping to think or at least to publicly acknowledge the people that are made to feel unsafe as a result of this. And it pains me how much this is invisibilized. It pains me, all of the people that are targeted, harassed, and our dollars that are taken out of our pockets to pay for this. So when I think about that $93.8 million and where that could be spent, because that's what we're all here today to talk about, right? The $93.8 million and also all of the rest of it that is within our jurisdiction, that is within our power, our control to put towards the people that I think we're all here today to talk about because we all care about, right? Like, we're here because we care about us, we care about our city, we care about the people in it. You're here because I presume the same, or else why would you be councillors, right? Why would you be here to listen to us for 10 and a half hours straight? So that's what I'm here to advocate for, is where that money goes. And there's going to be a pattern here, is it's all going to be things like good unionized jobs, supports for the people that are impacted by the things that everyone before me has been talking about, right? You know, mental health supports. The city can hire social workers. The city can hire people to be in these, you know, affordable housing, social housing for wraparound supports. The city can hire people that are experts, qualified, and give them good unionized jobs. And that is infinitely more effective than going around and brutalizing people through violence that has been shown to be ineffective year after year after year. It makes no sense to me that, you know, we see the studies, we see the statistics, we see the reports, and they are always shown to have no positive effect on society, on rates of crime, yet we keep on funneling money down them. You know, the police force is like the one force that grows every single year of the budget, and I just, it is like Alexa said, it's the worst part about living in this city is seeing all of the things that could be so amazing, seeing all of the joy and the organizing and the passionate people, which is why I loved living in Davenport so much and why I wanted to talk about, you know, all of the amazing things that I've unfortunately had to give up on. And instead, this is where we're at.
I'm afraid you're at time. Okay. Are there any questions for Mel? No? Thank you so much for giving us your evening and your thoughts tonight. Next, I have Joselle Angelica Gerardo. Hey, Joselle, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm all right. It's been a long day.
Yeah, I've been seeing you all day, so.
Okay. Go ahead.
Great. I actually had good afternoon here, but good evening, Budget Committee and councillors, and to everyone here. It is very cold outside, so I would like to give a shout out to the members of the public here showing up at City Hall. So thank you, folks. My name is Giselle Angelica. I'm a proud transit rider and young resident of Toronto Danforth, and a worker both in Toronto Centre and Spadina, Fort York. Firstly, thank you for keeping Toronto in mind in this budget. And of course, opening the doors of City Hall to residents to share their thoughts about the budget. Truly a democracy in action. But I would like to highlight that the budget is good, but it's not great. We need to do better and make this city more livable, not just for some of us, but for all of us. I'm speaking today in support of this budget that prioritizes affordability, reliability, and accessibility for all through the implementation of a fare freeze and a fare cap as highlighted in the budget. I'm also asking the city to expand its revenue tools and begin advocating to receive more from the province and the federal governments. This city is frankly unaffordable. I'm currently living in an apartment with multiple people. It's a need and not a want. I'm also working 2 contract jobs where there's actually no job security because it's a need and not a want. I'm also watching my spending, calculating every penny and dollar that comes out of my pocket, wondering if I can spend money on a sweet treat. It's also a need and not a want. As a young person, it is so discouraging to always think about needs and not wants, knowing that in this lifetime, I may not even be able to afford a home to own in a city that I love. However, because of how unreliable, I would also like to talk about how unreliable it is with the TTC's slow streetcars and buses. The TTC has become unattractive and some people no longer want to take it. Last Sunday, my roommates and I, living in the East End, wanted to go to this cheap brunch spot in Parkdale. Shout out to BB's. The difference in commute time was vast. It was a 15-minute drive versus a 1-hour commute. I refuse to take an Uber or Lyft because I'm a frequent TTC rider, and it's cheaper. Transit is the only way for me to get around the city, always hopping on and off on buses, streetcars, and subways. I don't drive or own a car. Frankly, I can't even afford to. And I even can't afford taking Ubers or Lyfts everywhere. Transit will always be attractive to me because I have no choice. I also am just an overall fan of public transit. The fare freeze and fare cap will tremendously help people like me. With my 2 jobs, it requires me to go all around the city. These 2 initiatives will give people like me relief in ensuring that we can go out and about the city without thinking more about how we can budget our transportation costs monthly. Every dollar that I will save from the fare freeze and fare cap can go to other expenses like being able to afford groceries and actually enjoying the city. It should not be up to individuals of this city to save up their dollars and pennies. It should be up to the people we elect to give us what we ask for, and they're quite basic. Simply to be able to move around the city at a fair rate, to be able to afford groceries again, to be able to afford a reasonable rent. The fare cap and fare freeze is more than just saving money. It's showing that the City of Toronto cares about its residents. So I'm also asking for the City Council to work more closely with provincial and federal governments to get creative on revenue tools. Because the people of Toronto deserve more. Because we deserve governments that care about us. Let's make the city a true global city, livable and affordable for all, by continuing to make transit attractive and by keeping fares frozen, capping fares, and finally asking other levels of government to step up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? No? Thanks for that. Next, I have listed Grace Esford. Hi, Grace.
Hello, councillors and staff. My name is Grace Esford, and I'm speaking because of Progress Toronto. I moved to Toronto in 2019 for graduate studies and have made Toronto my forever home, as long as I'm not priced out of the city. I'm a proud member of Ward 9, Davenport. I'm really happy that the City Council has increased library hours and Sunday openings, and I would also like to see more money allocated for child literacy programs offered through the library. As someone who is new to Toronto, I gained connection with the city through visiting the Toronto Public Library branches across the city for new reads, attending free lectures at the Reference Library, and have volunteered for 3 years with the Toronto Public Library program Leading to Reading at the Parkdale branch. This program offers elementary grade students free one-on-one reading and literacy help for 1 hour a week. I currently work with an 8-year-old student who's from Brazil. English is his second language, and he has been behind in literacy skills for a few years now. Additionally, he struggles with making new friends due to language barriers at times. With the free Leading to Reading program offered at the Parkdale branch, it allows him 1 hour a week of focused reading resources so we can practice his reading together, talk candidly about anything and everything, and help him to build his confidence in English in a low-risk environment. No grading, no classroom expectations, just one-on-one time together to read what he wants to explore. My reader and I share how our sessions are the highlights of our week, and he has made good progress in his confidence to try new books, even if he makes mistakes along the way. Since our first session together, he's taken leaps in his language skills. I would love to see more of the annual city budget allocated to the Toronto Public Library system in order to bolster programs like Leading to Reading that help young students, like my reader, gain confidence in his reading and language. With increased budget, there can be more locations offered in the city, more program coordinators in place to coordinate everything, more time slots offered for students, and more days of the week available to better serve those who are struggling with literacy within the city. My reader is the second student in the program I've been able to work with, and this resource at TPL is vital in supporting childhood literacy for low-income households to ensure all children thrive and have confidence in their abilities as they move into adolescence. It's also a great way for him to be integrated within the communities and feel that he's special and a part of it. I see such joy on the face of my reader when he figures out new compound words, or we get to explore the bookshelves to find his favorite animal books, which happen to be capybaras. He's a sweet kid, and I'm excited to continue his reading journey at the Parkdale branch. TPL student programs like Leading to Reading make an impact where it counts most. It provides not only a free, inclusive space for him to thrive, but increases community cohesion and a means to counter social disconnect. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing how library programs like Leading to Reading will be supported in the annual budget.
Thank you so much, Grace. Are there any questions? No? Grace, thank you, first of all, for shouting out the Parkdale branch, best branch.
Yes.
And for the first time in 20 years of listening to budget deputations mentioning capybaras. So thank you for that.
Fabulous. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Nikki Ward. Nikki? No? Okay. Satadru Roy? Satadru Roy? Oh,
I'm speaking on his behalf.
okay.
So you're seeing
That
me again.
works.
Sorry, folks. Okay. Good morning, Chair and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Satadru Satadal Roy. I am a Toronto resident of Ward 10 and frequent TTC rider. I'm here today to strongly urge Council to increase and protect funding for public transit in the 2026 city budget. For many Torontonians, transit is not a choice. It is a daily necessity. Keeping fares affordable through fare capping while improving reliability directly supports workers, students, seniors, and people with disabilities who rely on the TTC every day. I ask the Council to prioritize high-impact, cost-effective investments that make a real difference to riders and Toronto residents' lives. This includes expanding rapid TO bus lanes, investing in transit signal priority, and improving streetcar and LRT switches, track maintenance, and winter reliability. These measures move more people more reliably at a fraction of the cost of major expansions. Safety and comfort must also be a priority, especially during winter. Well-maintained tracks, reliable switches, bus streetcar stops, and protected transit lanes improve service while reducing delays, breakdowns, and unsafe conditions for riders, pedestrians, and operators. I also encourage the Council to consider fair and responsible revenue tools to support these investments. In the downtown core, modest adjustments to on-street municipal parking rates and commercial parking levy, reflecting high demand for limited public space, can improve turnover for businesses and generate necessary funding for transit. In addition, I urge Council to continue exploring congestion fees for vehicles arriving downtown, since they create huge traffic congestion. These are about reducing gridlock, improving travel times, and ensuring more funding for necessary infrastructure for the City of Toronto, such as TTC, housing, and many other programs. Reliable and affordable transit is an investment. This reduces congestion, lowers household expenses, strengthens the economy, and improves quality of life for all Torontonians and daily commuters. I respectfully ask Council to make and increase transit funding a clear priority in this year's budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Satadru, thank you for those thoughts. And Joelle Angelica, thank you for assisting there.
Thank you.
Stella Karagianakis. I thought I saw Stella. She was here. No? Okay. Saqib Shahab? Online? Okay. Saqib, are you with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much. You've got 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I'm Saqib Shahab, a resident of Ward 21, Scarborough Center, and I often use Line 2 to get around the city. Unfortunately, subway slow zones, station disrepair, and delays seem to punish me for choosing transit. My route home often involves taking Line 2 to Kennedy Station, followed by the 43 bus. Sadly, several parts of the eastern section of Line 2, and in particular the final stretch between Warden and Kennedy, are designated slow zones due to maintenance deficiencies. This means that every trip home involves large chunks of crawling forward at 20 to 30 kilometers an hour. When I finally make it to Kennedy Station, I met with temporary outdoor bus stops that provide little to no shelter from the cold, the snow, or rain when waiting for an overdue bus. These temporary shelters, in particular, have been at Kennedy Station for almost 2 years now, and have made their way to Warden Station as well. I do appreciate that these temporary shelters are there as the consequence of ongoing investments into station improvements, but their ineffectiveness and haphazard construction displays the considerations of transit riders have not been financially prioritized. On several occasions, I've skipped out on choosing transit because these issues made it too difficult, too slow, and too inconvenient to get to where I needed to be. I have the privilege of not being entirely dependent on the TTC, but I can only imagine how difficult these issues are for those who are. particularly those like my father who simply can't, from a health standpoint, endure 20 minutes waiting in the cold. I believe a commercial parking levy is a fantastic way to fill the TTC's budget gaps. This would direct funds from usually empty parking lots to usually full buses and trains. I implore the Budget Committee and the City Council to accept the TTC's proposed budget and go a step further by committing financially to improving subway slow zones, station disrepair, and delays. Thank you all again for your time, especially to those who have been here all day. I know we're looking forward to a better TTC and a better Toronto, so thank you again.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for your deputation today. Next, I have Izan Ahmed Parampali. Oh, Stella, I thought I saw you. Where'd you go? Okay, come on up.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I confess, there are a few 5-minute gaps in my memory of the last 11 hours, so.
I'm sorry. Anyway, you have my sympathies for being here this late. But I think these budget consultations are like visits with Santa Claus. And what would you like the city to give you in 2026? It's astounding what people are asking from municipal government. But what is more astounding is that I think the City of Toronto believes that it is Santa Claus. And maybe some of you also think that money is magically created and it just appears in taxpayers' pockets by wishful thinking. Well, I'm sorry, there's no bottomless money pit, and taxpayers in this city are broke. You've already cleaned us out. And while you've been playing Santa Claus, I'm sorry to say, but you have been neglecting your municipal responsibilities. The roads are a disaster. The roads in the City of Toronto are the worst in the world. Catch basins haven't been cleaned out in decades. And the LRTs that we built instead of subways are not working. But you could use tax revenues to fix all of these municipal problems, yeah, that affect the public at large, that affect all people, renters and owners and employers, employees, residents, visitors, everyone's affected by these. Instead, you have chosen to give public money to private organizations. I think you've heard quite a bit from Acorn here today, but I'm going to give you another example. Social Planning Toronto gets from the City of Toronto hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, and even more during an election year. And what does Social Planning Toronto do? Advocacy work, yes? They advocate for what? No budget cuts. Revenue tools, more taxes, higher taxes. Wait a minute, you're taking my money and giving it to an organization that fights my best interests, that fights me?
So Stella, I'm going to step in for a sec.
Yes?
There's a thing I really should make all deputants aware of. Your speech here is not privileged. By which I mean you're legally liable if you defame somebody.
I'm just stating the facts. I am stating the facts.
There is no funding from the City of Toronto to Progress Toronto, just so you're aware.
For who?
Progress Toronto, none, zero.
Oh, no, I didn't, I said social planning. Sorry, did I say? I said social planning.
Oh,
I said social planning.
All right. And just so you're aware, they're not an advocacy organization. They're a registered charity, and under charitable law in Canada,
they are.
They don't do advocacy work.
But I suggest you read their reports.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But you know what? Okay, let's go to organizations that get public funding for for sheltering the homeless, providing shelter to the homeless. Okay, let's look at Homes First, which in 2024 received over $75 million from the City of Toronto. And if you do if you calculate what the city is paying, what it's costing the city for each bed that they provide, and some of those beds may be a cot with no mattress. It costs the city, forget the other levels of government, over $51,000 a year for a bed. That's $4,250 a month. Have you heard of hostels? You know, budget travelers use hostels when they're backpacking around. There are hostels in the city of Toronto. You can get a bed in a hostel in this city for $20 a night. That's $600 a month. And the city is paying $4,250 a month. Oh, and that's a good deal. You know, it's ironic that the unhoused or the homeless are sleeping in the most expensive beds. You know, and I'm sorry, but it's just not working. It's not working. You need to get out of the housing industry. Leave it to other people. They're doing a fine job. You know, those hostels, they get no public financing, no funding from any level of government. They are for profit. Let somebody else figure it out. So I'm sorry, but there are municipal needs that the city has, roads, sewers, you know, public transit, that affect everybody. And I'm not prepared to pay to fund registered charities that can obtain funds from the private sector. You know, they have certain advantages that the rest of us do not have. They can raise their money. They can organize fundraising.
So much, Stella, you're at time.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Are there any questions? No, seeing none. Earlier, I had called Izan Ahmed Parampali. No? Not online? Okay. Madeline McLeod? Madeline McLeod? Hi, Madeline, welcome.
Hi, I'm Madeline McLeod, and I'm a library science student. I'm here to ask the council to increase funding for housing and social services by cutting funding for the police. Reading and the Toronto Public Library have been a crucial part of my life for almost as long as I can remember. As a teenager, the library was my third place, a place where I could sit down and simply exist in public without having to pay for it. For me, the library isn't just a place to get books. It is a social service to be counted with every other crucial social service in this city. I'm here asking for increased funding for social services because I have seen the way that they impact people's lives for the better. I dream of a world where librarians who deal with incidents, overdoses, and mental health crises are adequately supported, where the public library is just one part of a comprehensive service network. I want the people who come into the library simply because it's a warm place to stay to have somewhere to go when the lights go out. People in the city are struggling, and I see it nearly every single day. When I see a mental health crisis, I know I can't call the police. We all know the huge impact that social services have on outcomes. More money for social services directly and effectively improves people's lives. I want to know that the guy who camps out in front of the library is gone because he's been housed, not because he's been moved along by the police. So once again, councillors, I ask you to decrease the budget for police to increase funding allocations for social services. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Madeline? No, Madeline? Thank you for sharing that with us. Firdaus Billy Moria?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, councillors and staff, for the opportunity to speak here and depute. I'm a member of ACORN in the downtown chapter, and I would like to speak about rent safe and its budget priorities within the larger scope of the current environment for renters and the challenges that they face. And I also have some suggestions for improving the effectiveness of rent safe within that framework of whatever budget allocation will be made. And I understand there's a proposal to increase that budget allocation. One thing I picked up from you, Councillor Morley's question to Marcia, I think, was what's the real problem? Is it, do we need more officers or do we need a more aggressive approach? I think it's both, but we definitely need a more, I would say, aggressive approach, but a more tenant-centric approach than RentSafe has been adopting over the past few years, which is exceedingly biased towards landlords. So for some context, within the last few years, there has been a trend of increasing weaponization by the landlords of maintenance issues. And this is used as a means of reno-evicting tenants who have been there, and mainly with the objective of removing longer time tenants with rent control so that they can be replaced by newer tenants paying a, let's call it a market rent. Now there's overwhelming anecdotal evidence. We hear this on a regular basis at our downtown chapter meetings and other ACORN chapters as well. I myself am experiencing this firsthand, and I can say it's really egregious, brutal, etc., and simply not reflective of the society that we live in. Given the economic environment that we're all facing right now, with tariffs and the job situation and so on, landlords find that their ability to charge market rent for new tenants is it's hitting a ceiling. So the pool of rent control older tenants is the best avenue they have to increase or maximize their profits. So that's something we should be conscious of. And very often these rent control tenants, longer time tenants, are lower income or retirees or otherwise vulnerable. And this can lead to other societal costs and implications. And one can argue that allowing this to happen is essentially counter the city's objective, stated objective of affordable housing. So we should keep that in mind as well. So given that council is considering a budget increase for RentSafe, there's a need for accountability and effectiveness for RentSafe. They should not just use a tick mark or a check mark approach. RentSafe officers and managers often take a very limited legalistic or technical approach to landlords. And in effect, this approach is landlord's bias, and it ignores the very severe consequences on tenants. Some recommendations are maintenance or anytime maintenance of building facilities are weaponized by landlords against individual tenants or group of tenants, this should implicitly fall within RentSafe's scope. If you talk to RentSafe officials, they will give you a contradictory response to that question. And I can say this, as I mentioned, I'm facing this kind of situation myself. Another recommendation is there should be a very credible and practical escalation process for tenants to fight such issues where RentSafe is not meeting, let's call it the mandate that it is originally intended for. And also importantly, I think there's a need for periodic external RentSafe audits and reviews with input from tenant stakeholders just to keep people honest. So in conclusion, I think not ensuring tenant rights and effectiveness will result in increased rent evictions, increased costs for society in terms of homelessness and other impacts, which other people have alluded to. And also it will result in increased costs for the city and other jurisdictions. So RentSafe will effectively save the city money by enforcing standards more effectively and more aggressively.
Firdaus, I'm going to have to stop you there. You're at time. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Isaac Opong. Isaac Opong. Hi, Isaac.
Good evening. 1 second, I'm just pulling up some notes.
Ready.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Got something here. Yeah. Good evening. I know you've been sitting here for some time, so I don't think I'll be long at all. So I appreciate the chair and everybody that's all the councilors and part of the committee. So my name is Isaac. I'm part of the COC advocacy group and for the community. And in doing some of the homelessness and refugee work in the last some years, I'm here obviously to speak on the budget and how we can hopefully be a blessing to the people of the city. I've grown up here, been here for 31 years, most of those years being in Ward 1. And there's some challenges that myself and my colleagues have been happening in trying to do the support services. So we get invites, for example, for the request for expressions of interest, for example, and those things are good, where we're able to use, be it if it's a building that's open or at the time we were even using buses. I believe Councillor Moyes also even advocated for that at the time for the cooling and warming centers. Those things are good, but usually they end up being a Band-Aid solution because we can get a roof over the head of those who are unhoused and are vulnerable, but then the wraparound services become an issue. So after that, then, as it was mentioned by one of the ladies earlier, you have then either police having to do something that they're not trained for, or you just have to have another group come in. Though I know we have access to make calls to 211 and that, it still becomes an issue. For example, in the next few days, we're doing our RV project where we'll be bringing in, some of the unhoused, give them something to eat, a place to stay, but again, temporary solution. So the ask is not even for a certain amount of money, but the ask is for some updates, accountability, partnerships, and connections. This Friday, I believe you're meeting with the mayor's office, and we've met in times past, but the challenge has become, after the initial meeting, hearing from somebody in the office again. So whether it's, I don't want to call any names, but from the managers to, all the other people in the Toronto shelter and support system, it becomes a challenge. So hopefully, I'm not in my notes, but let me go and mention one thing. Hopefully, you have the point in time counts that come out. The last one was done about a year and a half ago. The next one's going to be in about a year and a half time. But when it comes to the homelessness issue, it is something that we need stats and we need coverage and real-time solutions like every blessed day, because about 200 people, 190 something people are turned away from shelters daily. And that's just Toronto, not talking anywhere, in the GTHA. So that is my ask. I don't need 5 minutes. I hope that was short enough because I know you've been sitting for some time and it's a long day and there's others after me, that if we just get some updates, some connection, hopefully with those agencies that are boots on ground, to empower them, to help them, so then that way they can continue doing the work and not just getting a roof under their heads, but to give complete wraparound services. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Isaac, and thank you for the services you provide to people in Toronto. Are there any questions? No, seeing none. Thanks so much for being with us this evening. Dua Hijazi? I understand, Dua, you're online?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you all for being here today and listening to our consultations and deputations. I would like to speak about a senior citizen that I met this month. On January 9th after midnight, I was scrambling to find a BMO machine as I was to receive the monthly Trillium benefit and needed to run errands with the funds. I didn't expect that what I was going to witness next. By the time I reached Mattamy Athletic Center, I saw a senior citizen standing outside, propping himself up with a hockey stick, leaning up against the wall. I can hear that he was in pain and agony. Looking around at this hour, there was no nearby place where you can step inside and warm up for a few hours, no place you can be until sunrise, nowhere you can go to escape the chill of winter, which makes you feel like every bone in your body is aching, nowhere you can lay your head to rest without wondering if you'll have to wake up with nothing, not even your shoes. This senior clearly knew this. He was just trying to survive the night or moment or the hours to come. As a volunteer with peer support training, overdose prevention, first aid, and conflict resolution training, I often offer respite to those in need when possible. I finally convinced him to come to my home not far from where I found him outside. I knew he was in pain. I offered to call a medic to have him go to the hospital, but he refused. I didn't expect the hours to come would be his final hours. In my experience as a street outreach volunteer, I managed to avert a few overdoses, but this death I could not avert. How much can a senior citizen take of sleep deprivation, exposure to inclement weather, and malnutrition before collapsing? That night, as I welcomed him into my lobby, hoping he can make it up to my home and finally catch a break, he only made it that far, the lobby, where he sat down on the ground and not even an hour later collapsed and died. He got used to not getting too comfortable wherever he laid to rest, as seen by him choosing to sit up instead of lie down in spite of his exhaustion. Surely wherever he could find a place in the city to rest, he was most likely asked to leave eventually. I have been in shelters, which are now at full capacity, and know the challenges that come with living there, even temporarily. Often fights break out, your belongings get stolen, you witness folks overdosing, and many get discharged before getting anywhere near a solution that provides more stable housing. I still see many folks that I cohabitated with at a co-ed shelter in 2021 on the streets today, looking worse than they did when I met them 5 years ago, still nowhere near getting housing. 2 years ago, when I was outside City Hall, city housing counselors advised us that unless homeless clients are deemed housing ready, a counselor will not attempt to have them bridge to housing resources. When a home is a foundation of human needs, how can you expect that anyone will be housing ready when their basic human need is not met and they are trying to cope with the circumstances nonetheless? When will the Universal Declaration of Socioeconomic Rights be honored? When will we adopt a model and policies of shelters, city bylaws that put human needs first? Housing is a human need that is essential for life. When we deny anyone housing, we are denying them the right to life. I ask that we apply a housing-first model and a human rights-based approach to policies across shelters and city bylaws. Thank you.
Dua, thank you so much for that. Are there any questions? No? Dua, thank you for sharing that with us tonight. Next, I have Elsie Tellier. Elsie? Hi, Elsie, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, committee members. Thank you for staying here with us over a very, very long day. My name is Elsie Tellier. I am a staff lawyer at Arch Disability Law Center. Arch is a specialty legal clinic funded by Legal Aid that practices exclusively in disability rights law and serves low-income Ontarians with disabilities. Arch Disability Law Center is also part of the Toronto Heat Safety Coalition, which includes the Canadian Environmental Law Association and the Advocacy Center for the Elderly, among others. Together, we recognize that for vulnerable Torontonians, air conditioning is not a luxury. It's an essential public health measure that can save lives and reduce morbidity in our city. Low-income communities across the city of Toronto are disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change, despite having a notably lower carbon footprint. As climate change progresses, extreme heat events continue to become more frequent, more lengthy, and more severe. This may be hard to imagine in the midst of such a cold day, but extreme heat can be deadly, particularly in rental housing with no cooling. Torontonians with disabilities face heightened risks of experiencing health-related consequences of extreme heat due to higher rates of poverty and isolation. Torontonians with disabilities are more likely to live in low-income housing or group homes and are more likely to be homebound and thus unable to access public cooling areas. A 2025 study conducted by Public Health Ontario and the University of Toronto found that extreme heat was associated with significantly increased odds of mortality in nursing homes without air conditioning compared to those with air conditioning. The study estimates that approximately 33 people's lives were saved by the air conditioning mandate between 2020 and 2023. It also estimates that had the Ontario air conditioning mandate been implemented in 2010 instead of 2020, 131 fewer people would have died on extreme heat days. Our coalition therefore supports the City of Toronto's efforts to address excessive and dangerous indoor heat in rental units with a bylaw to be presented for approval in May 2026 to set a maximum temperature of 26 degrees Celsius in all rental units. In-home cooling is essential to protect tenants vulnerable to heat from the serious health impacts of climate change. The initial pilot program to distribute air conditioning units to income-eligible seniors in 2025 was a success, and individuals who received the air conditioning units are safer and healthier. We will continue to support the City of Toronto staff to ensure air conditioning units are supplied, delivered, and installed in as many homes as possible. We strongly support expanding the pilot program, which provides free air conditioning units to income-eligible people in Toronto. This program is an important part of public health intervention and will protect recipients. We recommend that the City of Toronto ensure that this budget reflects the needed support for successful implementation of the maximum temperature bylaw in all rental units. The City of Toronto should increase temporary financial assistance for landlords with low-income tenants. Targeted retrofit programs will ensure support for landlords to purchase cooling equipment and to make building upgrades that meet the new property standard without passing along costs to low-income tenants. Existing programs should also be expanded to include cooling infrastructure and be targeted to the landlords of low-income tenants, including the Toronto Hydro Energy Retrofit Partnership and the Residential Energy Retrofit Program. Funding is also needed for city staff to immediately apply for funding assistance from the federal and provincial governments to assist with the implementation of the bylaw as well. Finally, we recommend that dedicated funding within the Municipal Licensing and Standards Department be included in the first 5 years of implementation of the maximum temperature bylaw, including in 2026, to ensure capacity for dedicated education and enforcement efforts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you for hanging in to share those thoughts with us. Next, I have Tristan Ridley. Welcome, Tristan.
Thank you. My name is Tristan Ridley. I'm from Scarborough Southwest, but today I represent Strong Towns Toronto. We're an urbanist group whose core goal is financial sustainability of our city. We unequivocally support the tax increase, especially the funding for the state of good repair backlog. That incredibly boring term is everything the city owns that's in disrepair. Every time there's a slow zone on the subway, or a mechanical failure, or a roof leaking at any city building, or extra potholes, that is the result of it. The impact is huge, and when you put it off, it just gets more expensive. And the projection in the budget is for it to continue to get worse. We've spoken to some councillors who told us that it's due to limitations of the city departments themselves, not lack of funding, in which case funding needs to be provided for them to hire new people, buy new equipment, whatever's necessary so we can physically meet our maintenance goals or be locked into the long-term decay. So we would suggest actually a larger tax increase. Honestly, any reasonable accounting would call a tax increase less than inflation a tax decrease. Our Toronto tax rate's already lower than any of our neighbors, and they are a pittance compared to what they pay for. We're talking about cuts to programs that people need and love in exchange for dozens of dollars. I'm going to speak personally for a second, not for the group. I spent many years in deep poverty, and on my worst day, when I would walk from here to Lawrence in the snow to save a bus fare, I still would have paid these kind of amounts of money per citizen for these programs to continue at full strength. And it's not even that effective at keeping property taxes down when so much of our budget is largely beyond our control, like maybe the police. Honestly, the way we go about this process has become backward, where we pick an arbitrary number, no matter how carefully chosen that number is, and then try to make enough sacrifices to stay below that limit. We should be deciding what it is that we need and want the most, considering the cost of each item carefully. We are a fiscally conservative group. But then just accepting the total when it comes. That's how it works for a business or a family, and how it should work for a city. But since I have your attention and technically 2 minutes left, most of what we ever talk about and work on is directly financial, but not part of the allocation of funds, not part of the budget process. The secret reason why we have budget problems is because of sprawl. When you spread people out, it costs more. When you live in a walkable urban neighborhood, it costs much less, and it reduces the burden on everyone. I had a reference earlier to the taxes paid by downtown versus everyone else. Scarborough, where I live, pays 11% of the taxes and does not need 11% of the services. So we'd like to consider, once budget season is done, perhaps we can talk more about other ways to increase revenues and reduce expenses in the city that are not directly the budget. And in the meantime, please consider a tax increase sufficient to match inflation and our maintenance needs. Thank you. Cede my time.
Thank you, Tristan. I don't know who told you that state of good repair is boring. I consider that one of the most beautiful four-word phrases in the entire English language.
Nobody else, if you're not in, you don't know what that means. They don't know that
I understand.
This means that.
just know that I think of it as poetry, okay? All right. No questions, no? Frank Krupe. Hi, Frank, welcome.
Evening, honorable members of council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. Long day for you guys, eh? Yeah, if we were playing a hockey game right now, we'd be in like triple overtime right now. Maybe way past that, okay? So you probably have a hunch why I'm here wearing a Weston Lions jersey. And you're probably thinking, oh, we already talked about this today, okay? But the hockey community is a resilient community, and this fight is not gonna stop. It's really not. And this is going to amplify it significantly, okay? So my name is Frank Krupe. Some people know me online as a social media content creator as the Hockey Illuminati, where I have over 120,000 followers across all of my platforms. I'm here tonight because I'm a tax-paying resident of Toronto. I love hockey, and I love this city. It's my home. Okay? I love this city. I'm never going anywhere. And it's really, really sad to see parts of my city's culture and heritage and heart and soul get stripped away year by year, slowly but surely. So obviously we've voted to tear down Weston Lions Arena. Okay? Councilors, have any of you played hockey before? Did you play hockey?
This isn't really a question and answer period. This is your opportunity to give us advice on the budget.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't aware. This is my first time doing this. I'm genuinely curious, yeah, if anyone's played hockey. Okay, so Weston Lions Arena it's a landmark in Toronto. It is one of the most culturally important, most significant hockey rinks. Outside of Maple Leaf Gardens, you can make a case that it might be the most important heritage hockey rink in Toronto. And why it wasn't designated as a heritage building was a big misfire somewhere. And we are on the verge right now of throwing away 80 years of history, right? So we have this proposal that's been voted on to replace the rink with an MLSE Launchpad. MLSE Launchpad's a great program. It's free for the kids. It's awesome. And youth development in sports, it matters. But there's no hockey rink in that Launchpad, right? So what you've effectively voted on doing is creating opportunity for some youth at the cost of displacing kids that are currently playing at the Weston Minor Hockey Association. Okay? You don't have to answer this question. This is not a question, but I'm sure some of you have children. And how would you feel if all of a sudden, at some point in one of your kids' lives, they could no longer play their favorite sport? You know, there's a lot of emphasis that this council puts on equity, and this is, I don't know. Is this equity? So this is a real impact, and depending on the season, Weston Lion serves between 1,200 and 2,000 kids in a given week, and that's just the youth. You add in adult rec hockey leagues, and we're talking about generations of people that have played at that rink, the same rink that their parents played in, okay? Ice is very difficult to get in Toronto. Hockey is becoming more and more expensive every single year, especially in the West End. The rinks are always booked. And again, what we are doing is making it harder for the tons and tons of families that rely on that rink in that community. We're making it harder for them. Okay? So on the budget, this facility hasn't had an upgrade since 1990, 35 years. Okay? Was this council not prepared to spend $12 million to rename Dundas Street? I think so, right? So we'll spend $12 million to rename Dundas Street, or you were prepared to, but to spend $13 million to save one of the most historic hockey rinks in Toronto, we're not going to do that. This 13 million that we need, excuse me, is it 13, might be 15. The 15 million that this rink needs doesn't have to come all in one year. It can be displaced over several years, okay? So Parks and Rec 10-year capital plan is $4.3 billion. This is not an impossible ask, okay? This is a question of what's a priority. So on behalf of the hockey community, which is your biggest community in Toronto, okay, we are requesting that you consider not demolishing this rink, looking for a new alternative site for the launch pad. There's a skate park right beside the rink that you could use very easily, okay? And commit to repairing it over time, okay? The moral high ground is not choosing one group of kids over another, it's doing both. The city of Toronto is known as the hockey mecca of the universe, even though we haven't won a cup in a long time. We gotta start acting like it, okay? When you remove this rink, you remove hockey tradition, you remove pieces of the city's heart and soul, okay? And those are pillars that the city was built on. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions? No, seeing none. The next deputant I have is Rafi Vain Alakari. Rafi Vain Alakari? No. Derek Senior? Hi, Derek.
Hi, good evening. Is this one here? All right, good evening, and thanks for giving me the chance to come here on this cold January night. I wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of this budget, and I looked through it, trying to understand it best I could. I have questions I'm not expecting anybody here necessarily to answer today, but maybe to look at it more deeply. And I find the appendix to be the most interesting part, and I struggle with the numbers. So one of the things I struggle with is the line item reserves, 9%, and this is to fund an $18.9 billion operating budget, so it's not a small budget. And we're funding 1.7 of that, 9%, with reserves. That makes me nervous because reserves are usually things you use for rainy days, you use it for capital funding, you know, things like that, not normally for regular operations. So I really struggled to figure out where these reserves were being drawn from and what is the state of these reserves. And how are these reserves going to be funded? If we're taking from them, we're going to have to refill them. How are we going to do that? That makes me nervous. Another thing that I struggle with is the land transfer tax, $850 million. That's 5% of the overall operating budget. I don't know if everybody knows this, but our land transfer taxes, which we depend a lot on for funding important services and capital in the city, well, we're getting a lot less development. Real estate, if you ask me and you look at some of the news out there, looks like it's crashing. And I don't think we've got land transfer taxes of $850 million to depend on in 2026. I don't even think what we've budgeted for 2025 we're going to see whenever that comes out in a month or two. That's one thing. And I feel we have to be very careful where we're going here because it looks like we're getting into a lot of money trouble. There's other areas, I'm not going to spend any time on them because, well, there's a lot of detail here. I'll bore people with it. And I want to get to solutions because I think everybody, I've heard stories here that make me want to cry. Everybody's struggling. Taxpayers are struggling. We have a lot of young people struggling. I'd love to see the city thrive. And I've got a couple of ideas. I looked at where we have our funds, how we save money, how we invest. I saw bonds, I saw global equities. Global equities, why can't we invest in Toronto equities, Toronto companies? That was one thing. Another thing, do you know that Ontario has 3 million ounces of gold we mine every year? And I don't know if you know this, but look at how gold is doing compared to the Canadian dollar, the US dollar, any other investment instrument you can think of. Gold is doing amazingly well. Why can't we take Ontario gold and put it into our own coffers in the city? Silver, you know, we used to have a silver mining industry in this province. In Cobalt, Ontario, used to be called the silver mining capital of the world. There's an area maybe we could invest in too. And I've got one last one. I think this could be transformational, and that is create a public bank in the city of Toronto. I'll tell you, there's a state that has such a public bank, and it's called North Dakota. And they are wonderfully financed. They are in great fiscal shape, and they have lots of money available to do things that we all need. Why don't we do that? Where are we borrowing from, and why do we need to pay so much interest? So that's all I have. I think if we look at those ways of taking our investments and reallocating them, maybe we can do the great things that everybody here is trying so that we can all thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Are there any questions? No, seeing none. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts with us tonight, Derek. Sophia Theodorou. Online? Hi, Sophia. I understand you're online.
Yep.
Hi. Welcome. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sophia. I am a community advocate from Ward 5. I'm here to express concerns about the 2026 City of Toronto budget, particularly on adequate affordable capital development housing, the decision to increase property taxes, and expand reliance on land transfer taxes at a time when residents are already finding it tough. For many people in the city, affordability is no longer an abstract policy issue. It is a daily stress. People are choosing between mortgage payments and groceries, transit and childcare, heating and medication. In that context, even what may appear to be a modest tax increase has real consequences. The budget includes a 2.2% property tax increase when the city building levy is included. While this may be presented as manageable on paper, for residents, it's still a tax increase, and it comes on top of a rising cost in nearly every area of our lives. Calling it a levy instead of a tax does not change how it feels when people open their bills. Providing funding only to rentals and social housings, but not enough funding to capital properties. We need sufficiently more support for homeowners and first-time homebuyers. That includes property tax increases. Survey responses on page 48 of the City of Toronto's 2026 budget voted that affordable housing was the first and most important. Capital Plan page 25 shows housing came after transit. Water and housing are fundamental human rights and should be the top two, along with food for spending in the city. On page 3, it shows 8,000 affordable houses by cutting development costs. There are 75% of my generation, millennials, believe they won't be able to afford a house in the city. There are nearly 900,000 residents between the ages of 25 and 44, and the affordable houses should reflect that number of residents instead. The city has also continued to rely heavily on land transfer taxes, including new luxury tier measures. While these may seem targeted, they seem volatile, marketing-dependent revenue tools. When the housing market slows, revenues decline, and residents are left racing for the next round of increase to make up that gap. This is not a stable and sustainable way to fund a nearly $18.7 billion operating budget. What is particularly frustrating is that the budget itself acknowledges nearly $800 million in efficiencies, offsets, and reductions. That tells us something important. There was room to maneuver. There were opportunities to budget differently. Yet instead of using those efficiencies to meaningfully ease burdens on residents, the city chose to proceed with tax increases anyways. This raises a fundamental question. Why does the city seem to start with how do we raise more revenue rather than how do we better allocate what we already have? I want to be clear, this is not a call to gut essential services. Toronto needs strong transit, emergency services, and infrastructure. But there is a difference between protecting core services and refusing to critically re-examine priorities. Residents deserve to see strong scrutiny of administrative and overhead costs, clear justifications for every major spending increase, a willingness to defer non-urgent projects when affordability is at stake, and for more creative use of existing assets and efficiencies before reaching into taxpayers' pockets. Right now, the burden of balancing the budget is being shifted onto residents who are already stretched thin, homeowners, renters, families alike. This is neither fair nor sustainable. People don't feel that City Hall is sharing in that sacrifice. They feel that they are being asked to absorb the pressure while government spending continues largely uninterrupted. My request to council is simple. Please recognize the real human impacts of these decisions. Budgeting is not just about balancing columns. It is also about choices, priority, human rights, impartiality, neutrality, and equal values. Toronto did not have to raise property taxes and lean further on land transfer taxes this year. With more disciplined budgets and clear prioritization, we could have chosen relief instead of additional burden. I urge you to reconsider how the city balances its books and to put affordability, real lived affordability, at the center of your future budget decisions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sophia. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us tonight. That takes us to our final deputy, Gail Fairley. Gail? Oh, Gail's not here. Golly. I guess that means we're done. Okay, before I move the final motion, I just want to, for the benefit of the public, make sure that you're all aware that a group of Toronto public employees from the clerk's department, the IT department, and the AV department get here early to set up and stay late to take down. So they have had more than a 12-hour day, and it's only because of their great work that we're able to organize an opportunity for you to share your thoughts with us. So thanks so much to clerks, AV, and IT staff. Okay, now I got to move a motion, don't I?
Yes, you do.
We're getting a little fuzzy up here at the front.
We are.
I can't read that. I'm 62 years old. What do you want? Okay, there we go. Oh, can you get big font? That's smaller. There we go. That the Budget Committee received the public presentations on the 2026 capital and operating budgets for information. All those in favor, opposed, carried. That concludes our business. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts and being here with us this evening.
Thank you very much. You guys, good luck tomorrow.